Just kidding. Welcome back to Come and Brew It Radio, coming to you from Texas Brewing Inc. in Haltom City, Texas. You can find us on the web at txbrewing.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and share with all your friends.
In this episode, we'll be discussing the somewhat newly named pastry beer trend. It's been around in a form with breakfast stouts and other stouts and porters for a while, but has been taken to many new levels in a variety of other styles, all to capture the flavors of pastries. It could be the use of spices and specialty grains, or even actual pastries to get the right flavors to make a beer that captures the flavor of baked goods and desserts. And to have this discussion, we've enlisted some of our local specialists with Sherman's own Jeremy and Natalie Roberts, owners of 903 Brewers. Plus, we may even have a donut pairing to go with it all.
But before we get started, please be sure to check out our Patreon account to help support the show. Every little bit counts, and if you visit patreon.com/Come and Brew It Radio, we have a variety of options for you to help keep the show going, get involved, and improve it. Also, every live show will have a giveaway for all our patrons, and at the end of each month, we'll be doing a monthly product giveaway for all our $5, $10, and $20 patrons. I'm Greg.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Nigel.
I'm Mikey.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Natalie.
I'm Chris.
All right. And we also
Hey,
come
I'm
on,
Eric
Kirsten.
in the booth, man.
Oh, yeah, you're here too.
Yeah, I had to be here.
Full house.
And just
Yeah,
to kind of
lots.
reiterate what we've been talking about, remember when we talk about the Patreon stuff, that's the reason that you don't listen to any commercials on this show.
Right.
That's right.
And helps get us home safe. So, and also
give
when we
unbiased-
recommend a piece of equipment, or
Unbiased
ingredient or
reviews,
whatever.
Because
Yeah.
we use it.
Yeah.
Besides, we wouldn't want Stubby to start having to
Rub
sing
it all over our
jingles.
body.
Yeah, because that would be
I don't know. I
horrible.
would
It
like to
would.
see Stubby sing a jingle.
Like, we heard that. Remember?
I wasn't here that day.
You didn't get to
No,
hear have
no.
yourself a stubby little Christmas.
No,
It's
I
out there.
missed that.
It was
It's out
epic.
there.
It was life changing.
You
Was
can
it?
download it.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
Yeah, you should be.
it made me feel funny.
Like all over? Or
All
like
over, yeah.
In one
Yeah.
particular spot.
Let's put that up as a 99-cent download.
Hey, don't steal all the good beer.
Yeah. Jeez. All right.
All right, so away we go.
Right.
Once again, we've got a lot to get to tonight. We have a great local brewery in with us, one of the probably earlier
Yeah.
local breweries to pop up in what's now a
Number 8.
huge brewing scene. So number 8 out of, what are we at, like 70
I
now?
think 700 something. We
Yeah.
quit counting.
Right,
you guys are
right.
going to have to be right at the mic whenever you're talking.
Yeah, like-
yeah.
Yeah.
700. We quit counting.
Right. So it'll be good to have them in to talk about the pastry beer stuff. Not only that, we got Chris and his girlfriend Kirsten with some donuts, and we're going to do a donut pairing.
Yeah, thank y'all for
I
bringing
see
those.
something that looks like
Donuts.
beaver nuggets over there too. What is that?
Those are mine. Don't just say.
We did not
don't,
make
yeah.
those.
That has nothing to do with it. Okay, all right, that's completely separate.
Those
It wa-
aren't beaver nuggets.
They put those in the beer.
Nobody outside of
They
Texas
did
has
come from
any
a
idea
beaver,
what,
though.
what
That's
a beaver
called-
nugget is.
It's called more
The other people
popcorn,
have
please.
a different idea of what beaver nuggets are.
Probably so.
So we have Nigel back in studio
Nigel!
today. We're going to try to talk a little bit about his perspective on Iron Mash.
Ah, okay, yeah, that's a while ago now. Iron Mash was a competition that we've ran for 18 years now. And it's my first year of taking over this year. We all show up at Ra Brewing in Fort Worth in October, and we had a beautiful day.
God, I knew I should have hidden that thing before
Yeah,
the show.
you really should have done.
Hidden it,
And-
broken it.
I was here teaching a class the other day, and I almost smashed it all over the ground. But sorry,
No,
Nigel.
you're good.
Go ahead.
And the good thing with Iron Mash is that the brewers don't know their ingredients until they show up on the day. And so we had the awards day in late January, just a few weeks ago, and we had a great turnout. Of the 28 beers that were brewed on the brew day, we had 24 of them. 26 of them returned for judging.
Which is really good.
It's
With the
outstanding.
nature
Yeah.
of this competition is that some of them just don't come out drinkable. And actually, a couple people came out and served their beer that probably
Shouldn't have done.
not shouldn't
No,
have,
that's
but
wrong
could
words
have
to
stayed
use.
home. I have
Yeah.
no problem with them coming
Yeah.
out and
Yeah.
and serving a beer that they weren't happy
Yeah.
with, but they
No,
wanted to show it anyway.
Hey, and what better to get rid of a poor beer to other people, right?
Yeah, but
Empty
26
can.
out of 28 is
Yeah,
a really
no,
good
it was
showing.
fantastic. It was a great afternoon. Of course, on the awards day, we also asked them to bring out a food pairing as well. So we had 26 or 24 showed up on the awards day. We had 24 different food pairings as well. And
Really outstanding food.
yeah,
there
the
that
food
day.
the food went up a level this year. I think
It
people
really
are
did.
starting
Yeah.
to put some emphasis on the food pairing, and it was really really good. It was a good afternoon, well attended. We had a great raffle.
Hey, does anybody remember who won second place in that?
Bunch of jackasses.
Nobody
I don't
remembers
know, they're-
second place,
No.
man.
I'm trying to remember
No,
who
I
it
don't.
was.
First
think-
loser.
I think
Is
they
that
were
what you're
wearing
talking
matching
about?
outfits.
Best loser,
I think
yeah.
it was Justin Guarini, right? Wasn't it?
I do happen to believe it was you guys.
It was us. That's right.
You know,
Recognize, fool.
Now I will like to go on record here and say I had nothing to do with the judging. Otherwise, you might not have done. No.
what I've loved to see.
Nope, throw that
is
one out.
several years ago, people had been encouraged to bring some food, and you saw a lot of people. We used figs in the beer, so they brought fig Newtons, and there was no effort into it. Or they used lemon peel, so they brought like lemon sandies or something.
Well, the
And
first
now-
year they did the beer pairing, if I remember correctly, somebody won with beer nuts. I think that was the winning
Really?
food
Really?
pairing
Wow,
was
okay.
beer nuts. Yeah.
Well, people had brought in the past just something that had the same ingredient, and that's not really to me a great beer pairing. Oh, look, it's fig and fig. Okay, and these pairings now are just ridiculous.
There was one guy there
effort
that
people
had-
are putting in.
Who was the guy? He had pastrami that he made himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
cheese that he made
Cheese.
himself, and pickles that he made
Mhm.
himself to go along, and it was all really good. The ones that won the food pairing, which was Chris and Matt and Andrew,
Andrew, yeah.
the Weisenheimers, their food was out of this world. The
Yeah.
cool little like Asian taco things that were delicious. There were so many good foods there.
Yeah.
Put a lot into that. There were
It's-
3 or 4 things happening at once with that food.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was.
Yeah, it's neat to see all that happening.
It was just a really fun event. Both the Brew Day and the awards thing, I just really, really enjoyed. Very well done, Nigel. I know a lot of work went
Thank
into
you.
it, and you did an excellent job. So
Yeah, it was.
Nigel deserves hugs from everyone.
I'll forgo the hugs, thanks, especially from
Okay,
you.
hugs from everyone.
prison hugs.
There you go.
So from behind.
Right.
Hug from behind.
It's the only way Nigel likes a hug.
So,
only way
so
Nigel
based
likes to
on
be
how it
hugged.
went this year, do you have some ideas, of some changes that you're going to make next year? Or, I'm not to probe you too much on what you think it's going to be, but
Hey, no
do
probing.
you feel like you're
No
going to go
probing.
in a completely different direction, or are you going to go with a lot of things that worked this year? Or
So this year we put in. We obviously put in some specialty ingredients, but we also put in the restriction of having to use an ingredient from different geographical location. The hops, the yeast, and the malt all had to come from different geographical locations. So there was a second restriction on what you could brew with. There will be a second restriction this year too. I've got an idea of what it's going to be and how it's going to be. We've just got to get the logistics of it set up, but there will be.
so you already have some pretty good ideas for what it's going to be again.
Yeah, and we nearly ran with it this year, but we decided, hang on, we can make 2 competitions out of this. So
Cool.
So we've got stuff in mind for next year as well.
And as we talked about the last show when we really went into who won and all that, Father Jeff and his brewing buddy Nick from Draft Punk, their beer was an absolute clear first place to me. I mean, it was really an outstanding beer, and it was really good to see Father Jeff back around. We've talked about him a little bit on
Yeah.
some of the things that
Just
he's
Jeff
gone through
now.
in the last year. So yeah, just
Just
Jeff
Jeff.
now actually.
Jeff.
Yeah, and so very glad to see them with a strong showing and big smiles on their face and having a good time.
Yeah, and for the record, their beer was an American stout, and their specialty ingredients that they used were Swiss Miss hot chocolate mix and cube peppers.
And making a stout in this competition this particular year was no small accomplishment because they really only had 2 malts to work with.
Right, one base malt and one
And one
adjunct.
specialty
Yeah,
malt.
one specialty malt. Yeah.
And then they used the chocolate in place of a chocolate malt,
Right.
basically. And really, I think if you'd have served me that beer and just told me it was a stout, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. I wouldn't have thought, they had to do something weird to get to this. I mean, it was a pretty solid stout. And then the way they used the peppers in it was really excellent. So very, very good job by them, I thought.
Yeah. And so, for the record, like I say, Come and Brew It Radio was second. Third place was Graham Brewing in Sean Graham, a rookie to the competition, his first time entering, and he brewed a fantastic American Pale Ale and used tahine salt and rose hips.
When I
was
tasted
good.
when
It
I
was
tasted
really
their
good.
beer, I thought that's the kind of beer that wins this too. I really thought they had us head and shoulders just because the tahini salt in it was so pronounced and right out front. I thought that's this type of competition. That's the kind of thing that does really well. So when he won, I think I talked about it on the last episode.
Yeah.
When he won, I was right in the middle of telling Chris, "See, that's the kind of beer that wins. We have absolutely no hope of winning this."
Right after
as they
absolutely
announced our
zero
name.
hope, and they
Yeah.
said we won.
But so your beer was
Shows how
a
much I know.
Belgian pale with.
Yeah, Belgian Pale Ale with tahini and
Chamomile.
chamomile.
Okay,
yeah.
now since the judging, I've tasted the base beer. It's always fantastic.
I really
it
love
was
the base
fantastic.
beer. Yeah,
The base beer.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we won on the strength of the base beer. Our specialty ingredients weren't real prominent in ours. We had a bit of a tough time getting them in, but that's the beauty of that
They
beer.
they
is
must have been there for the judges to score it well.
They were there, and and the blending in with the yeast phenolics from a Belgian yeast like that was on our side, I think. So I was very happy with it.
I'm trying to find the exact description that Bradley put on the post for the exact food pairing, and I can't find it. But it was about 3 paragraphs long.
Right, because he had to name every ingredient
Right.
that was in it. It was basically a little wonton with some pulled pork and some marinated mung beans.
fermented.
I thought it was.
Fermented mung
beans.
beans. Well, he said fermented. They did it that morning.
I thought it was
So.
brain. It looked like brain.
Yeah, they were hanging brain.
Yeah,
Probably
Yeah.
so with those guys.
It was delicious too. I ate about
it,
5
it
or
was
6
good.
of them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
so
So-
that's the Iron Mash, and we'll talk about it again next year when we
Yeah,
do it, and
and
hopefully it's every bit as good as it was this year. Because I had a
Entries will
blast.
open in September.
So moving on from
Yeah.
that, another news item for this show is that our ProBrewSupply.com website is now live. It's a new offshoot of the business, Texas Brewing Inc. It's a pro brewing supply part of the company. If you're a home brewer going pro or pro that's looking for quality ingredients and equipment, but most importantly, customer service, we are here to help you. So that's one of the things Stubby and Austin have been working on that for a while.
Long time.
And now it's finally happening, and it's there's a lot of quality products and whatnot. We got a lot of good ingredients, Muntins and Urix suppliers. As far as that goes, we have a lot of great malts in stock, and I think it's one of those things where if especially if you're on a smaller scale and you're interested in finding a supplier, look into it, ProBrewSupply.com.
Yeah.
So just got to do a shout out for that one since it's live now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that we thought was
Omega.
interesting
When
was
this
Omega's
popped up
new
today, I got
strain,
so excited.
Yeah.
Gulo. I guess they
Greg
call it.
always gets upset
Julo?
when things pop up.
Yes, exactly.
Bulow.
Nigel's the one that pulled the
Bulow.
that saw it first.
I
so-
just saw it come through on Facebook. That's where I saw it.
Gulo Ale is the progeny of our Irish Ale and French Saison strains. This true genetic hybrid is not a blend. It's a beast at devouring sugars, which creates a very dry, effervescent, thirst-quenching brew without any of the peppery clove phenolics associated with Saison and Belgian ales. Expect a citrus-forward aroma with hints of peach and a clean finish. Gulo Ale can produce a very dry beer with a 90% approximate attenuation, apparent attenuation, and excels in any style where a high level of attenuation is desired without the phenolics. So thinking IPAs, including brewed
Brewed
IPAs,
IPAs.
stouts, and beer to guard.
So this is a diastaticus strain also.
It is,
So,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what they're talking about with it drying out so much. And they list the alcohol tolerance on it at 12%. So
This is
you
nominal.
can pretty much do
Yeah.
whatever you want with it. And the description there with the peach esters, I think fits in perfect with a hoppy beer.
Right.
I really think for pale ales and IPAs, this
Yeah.
will be an outstanding yeast. Stuff that you really want
Yeah,
to
I
dry
wanna-
out and be real drinkable.
It would have been
Yeah.
nice to have that because I just brewed today. I brewed the double IPA recipe
Yeah.
for the hothead, the one that worked so well. And I thought, man, if I could have another one yeast to put on this, I just went with Belle Saison today because I was like, I'm gonna try something different with
Something
the other
different,
half
yeah.
of it. Had this been in the shop, I'd have went for it just to see,
Yeah.
dry that out and make it make it more of like a triple.
Right.
It's gonna be
What
like
would you,
that.
Brandon? What would your thoughts be on a tropical stout or something like that? Bit too dry?
Yeah, I don't. It says stouts. I have a hard time thinking about a stout that finishes at 10:04.
I was trying to think of a stout.
Well,
that
it could be an
used on, but-
imperial, like they did
Well,
with some others,
maybe.
where it's just getting rid of some of
Yeah.
that extra sugar, not all of it.
Yeah.
I still just feel like you don't want something that's going to go all the way down to almost nothing with a
Right,
stout.
stout,
I would have a hard time using this one on a
Yeah,
stout.
but imagine going from say a 1035 finish to a 1020 finish in an imperial stout. That's where I was thinking. Hey, look, there's a catalog.
Might be interesting on a Brew.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
Brew. Like I
For
say, pale ales and IPAs I think would be great
Yeah.
for, just because I think that's one of the bigger flaws that I find in homebrew pale ale and IPA is it's not dry enough. And I think those need to be dry and real drinkable, and I think that'll help with that. That's one of the things that I think is a common flaw with homebrew is a high finishing gravity, or at least the perception of it. And drying beer out, I think, really goes a long way towards making it just more drinkable and more enjoyable beer. So I like strains like this that help you out with that. And hell, I love everything that Omega
Well,
does.
they're giving something that's like a West Coast that really does take it down a notch further than like the double IPA version. The Diplo that they sell is fantastic,
Yeah.
but it does leave some sugar in there,
Mhm.
you know. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, it'd be good to have something out of that, especially with, like you said, peach notes. That'd be good to have for any
Yeah,
West
it'd be
Coast.
almost like the American Ale 2
right.
that's got that kind
Little
of
less
fruity
nuttiness.
Yeah, and that plays really well with hops. I've always liked that one with IPAs. It really accentuates the
Yeah.
hops, makes them pop a little bit, but more attenuative. I'll take more attenuative any day. That's one of the things
Right.
I think fits in with a lot more beer styles than we think it does.
All right, so moving on.
So homebrew work we did this week. I was supposed to keg the Goza that I did, and
Didn't do that, did you?
man, I don't know what it is
Son
with this
of a
year, but
bitch.
I can't stop getting sick. I mean, I'm better now, but all week I've had all these sinus headaches and everything,
Nice.
and I just the night I was supposed to do that, I went and laid down on the couch and went to sleep at 8:30 at night. So the next show I will have the Goza, and I will have the Hefeweizen that I made with the same wort, and I should also have the agave lime beer that we
Yeah.
collaborated
Right.
with the Wild Acre guys. That's fermenting. I used the hothead yeast, so I figure it's probably done by now.
I was
only-
gonna go in and just tweak just slightly different because we used what I had come up with
I liked what you
during
came
the
up
episode.
with. Yeah,
I was maybe just gonna change the caramel a little bit. Maybe do we go 10?
it was 5.
You did the 5. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Then maybe I was gonna go a little. I was originally thinking go on the light end, so I might go a little heavier.
See, I really liked using the light caramel.
Or
I was
maybe I'll
just
go
going to use
2.
like Vienna or something like that without any caramel.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at your recipe, I thought I like that. If it's a real light caramel like that, I think I could go with that. And I think the agave nectar is going to leave enough of a flavor in there
Right.
also that'll add a little bit to that kind of caramel note too.
And I have my agave from the 2 years ago at Iron Mash. Yeah, I'll just use that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like honey. You can
It's a
just let
little
it
bit.
sit,
It's
yeah.
a little bit more than a pound, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, whatever.
But the trick is going to be getting the lime in it. I think that's going to be the part that I'm going to have to play around with some. But within the next 2 weeks, I think I should be able to get that done. So I should have all 3 of those beers for the next show. So my beer work that I did this week was I didn't do the work I was supposed to do.
I should have the fast lagered or fast fermented summer pills coming up by the next episode.
That's going to be a cool one.
It's down to I just cold crashed it this morning, so I'll switch it over. I may just leave it in the same Furmonster for a week and then keg it like I did with the Mikey Light, and then the other batch will sit in lager for about 6 weeks.
Did we talk about the Mikey Light on the last episode?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
we did. Okay.
I got to brew that
tasty.
one again.
I was so blown away by that beer.
Just so stupid good.
And I brewed 24 gallons in the last 2 days.
Holy crap.
So
2 days.
That's more than 2.
yeah,
Yeah,
I had to get some beer in the kegs again. Had to get
I
some.
ne- I need to
Had
do
to get
that.
some iron thistle in the keg for Trish. So
there you go.
Oh,
Does that
yeah.
account
Made
for
2
your
kegs
energy
worth of
level
that.
tonight?
I got to brew chocolate mint for Trish.
yeah.
She put in a request.
I'm not going to brew anything for
No,
Trish.
me neither. I had.
I think we should all brew something for Trish.
I had a maintenance day today.
Good luck.
Clean some kettles. Clean some anything that needed some PBW. So
Just clean yourself.
no,
Okay.
He doesn't do that.
no. Why would
Just
I
a
do
little
that?
British
splash.
thing.
Just a splash from when he's
I've
cleaning
got-
kettles.
I've got servants that clean me. So
Oh.
you know. And tomorrow's my brew day. Brewing a Kolsch tomorrow. So
Cool.
Oh yeah, you were asking for the profile.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did. I taught the intro to brewing class last weekend, and that's when I did that agave lime beer. And I took home one of those Anvil stainless fermenting buckets.
Mhm.
And I'm sold on that thing. That's going to live at my house.
It's
now.
awesome, isn't it?
So
I got 3 now.
Made a new friend.
Like I kind of half-assed put them together to put on the floor, but I pulled that one out to get ready for Brandon, and as I'm putting the valve together, and I'm really taking a look at it, I'm cleaning. I'm like, okay, wait, damn it, I'm gonna have to get one now.
yeah, I had kind of given them a passive look
Mhm.
before, and not really paid a lot of attention to them. And when you're doing that, and I really got to look at the way the dip tube and valve assembly works and all that, I thought, boy, I really like that.
Yeah.
And then I like how the lid latches onto the top.
Yeah,
There's just no doubt that you're sealing it real well. It's got the big hole for the stopper, so you can actually use that as a sample port too, where you can, if you don't
Right.
want to use the
Yeah.
valve, you could put a thief down through where the stopper goes, and I really like it. So I'm going to keep that. I'll probably be getting another 1 or 2 of them, but
Yeah, and the little white caps off the orange carboy cap, they fit over the spigot quite nicely if you want to be able to seal that off at any point.
oh, that's a good idea. You can put some
Ooh,
sanitizer in
yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
cool.
Good idea.
So take a look at those if you haven't before. They're, obviously you're going to spend a little bit of money on them because they are stainless steel. But the beauty of them is that they're stainless steel.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
ever have an issue with them, you can put boiling water on every metal part on there, and then just replace all your rubber parts, and you're
Away
good
you
to go.
go.
I mean,
So
you can
apparently they're a
truly
good price to replace.
sanitize them.
Yeah,
Cheap price for
yeah,
replacements.
they're pretty good.
I
Yeah.
just got a few now. So.
Yes.
As
Just
far
in
as
case.
before-
You know, one of the things we had talked about too, when a possible issue with them, the fact that there are threads and stuff on the inside of it. But I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, it takes away needing to use an auto siphon, and we always talk
Yeah.
about how many crevices and nooks and crannies there are in auto siphons and what problems those
Yeah.
present, and those are all plastic.
That's
But
probably
this, I mean, you can sterilize this, not sanitize it. You can sterilize it. You can
yeah.
take these parts and put them in a pressure cooker and
Yeah.
Yeah.
really get them clean.
The
So
fact you don't need a siphon is probably one of my favorite things about it.
yeah.
You know,
So
you just run straight out.
I'm sold on it. I really just kind of gave it a passing glance when I looked at them at NHC, and then when I got to use it, I thought I really like this thing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. After Nigel brought his over the last few times, and I was helping tighten up some of the parts, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this now. I see why you
Yeah.
see why you're digging this thing.
Yeah.
It's lightweight. It's
We had
easy
to have
deal
a
with."
fight so I could take it home, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Nigel brought out a knife. I have a wound.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital for a week. So I was like, "How could you do that to me? I got kids, man." I said, "I don't care. It's my anvil."
It's my anvil, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
you know.
It's
That's,
vicious.
that's the way he rolls.
As far as other experiment homebrew work went, I have managed to finally transfer over the experiments beer.
did
which
you
I
bring
know-
that?
Alright.
I did not bring it.
It's on the list though.
Yeah, and I specifically said it'll be ready for next show after
This
this.
is the next show.
We'd have drunk it by the next show.
Man.
Well, it's in secondary right now, fining, and it'll be in kegs ready for the next show.
This is the next show from when you said it, because we hadn't had a show, so this is the next one in line. So I mean,
But I
You know,
also
I already let everybody down with my beer. You were supposed to swoop in and be the savior, and now
well,
you're.
I
got
swept in
donuts.
with
they
the
brought
assist
the
from Kirsten
All
for
right,
something
all right.
else. So.
Well,
Kirsten
you
brought
can't
the
take credit
donuts.
for what she did.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
That's
say,
right. You
you
didn't
know-
swoop in. She did. She did the
Like I
swooping.
said,
Don't
assist.
take credit for someone else's swoop, dude. That's all I'm saying.
But I also
Keep your
finally
swoops to yourself, all right?
That's right.
That's right.
I finally got around to building a tapped Keyser this
Blah,
last
blah,
weekend.
blah. You didn't bring us beer, okay?
He's talking about the work he did, though.
It's
Yeah.
he didn't bring us beer.
My
It looked good,
my
Chris.
review was the work I didn't do. I told you about the stuff that I was going to do and then didn't do. At least he's talking about something that he did.
Oh,
so-
yeah, you didn't bring beer either, did you?
I didn't bring
I didn't
anything
either.
at all.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of coming up brew days, tomorrow we're doing Kirsten's first brew day.
All right,
Hey,
cool,
all right.
cool.
We're brewing an Eldorado Pale Ale.
Cool.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
A competition in this group on Facebook called Run Like a Fermentalope, which is like a homebrew fish fan club. And they're having a competition, so
There are a lot more
It's time for me
people
to
that are a
start.
part of that club than you would think that there would be to cross the two over.
I
It's a
know
pretty big
there
group.
are
Like
quite a
pH
few.
fish?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
That kind of fish?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I mean,
No, just fans
You
of
never
fish
know,
in
like,
general. You
Yeah,
know,
the band fish.
I
yes.
like fish.
I like
I like
fish.
I like fish, goldfish, trout fish.
They're in the water.
Fish from Marillion.
We only use isinglass.
No, we just need to feel special, so we make groups for everything that we like.
There you go.
Oh, well, that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
We are
so
special.
we got two things we can get onto here. We got the Back to Basics review, which I really like this subject.
Yeah, this is
actually.
an idea that Nigel had come up with, so we're coming back around to, because we have done whole shows on it, but like this is not meant to be a very long and drawn out thing. So
But this is a good subject. This is one I hit on pretty hard in the intro to brewing class I taught last weekend. So, why don't you
And
lead
Jeremy,
us
feel
into
free
it,
to
Nigel?
jump in with your expert
I have
advice,
no
too.
paper,
Jeremy?
so I don't know what's on it.
Either y'all just
But it's
talk
even
into the mic
know.
if you have something to say about any of these subjects. Feel
Okay,
free.
so
Like
essentially,
deep throat that mic.
We're not waiting for anything. Y'all just jump in.
We're new to brewing, so we're learning tonight.
it was suggested by, as people know, my Monday through Friday job leads me sometimes to Illinois and the head office of a very large equipment manufacturer. And it was somebody that I work with through that industry told me that they'd just started brewing and had lots of questions, and I put them in touch with the podcast as a resource. And he came back to me the other day and he said, "Hey, I've listened to a few episodes," he says, "but you use so many acronyms, you use so many different terminology,
we're
so
bad
much
about
different
that.
terminology
Yeah.
and stuff." He says, I get lost. So if
We need,
I
like,
if I had some
subtitles.
feedback, it was like it would be do some beginner stuff. And I said, well, we've done most of it before, but and Stubby was there, and we spoke to Stubby, and we said, well, maybe we need to do a segment each week and just touch on some preliminary, some basic stuff to help some new brewers.
Yeah, and this is one. So what we want to talk about is gravity in beer, pre-boil, original, and final gravity. And the reason I hit on this so hard in the intro to brewing class that I did this last weekend is because it's one of those things that new brewers skip over. They don't take hydrometer readings. They don't get their
Bad
original
idea.
gravity or anything like that. And with extract, it's kind of like A plus B equals C. A certain
Right.
amount of extract, a
It
certain
should,
amount
yeah.
of water is going to be a certain amount of gravity. So the argument could be made, well, I don't really need to. If I have this volume of wort and I put this much extract in it, I pretty much know what the gravity is. But my counter to that is that when people come into the shop or whatever, or at a homebrew club meeting or whatever, they give you a beer, they want your opinion on it, especially they think there's something wrong with it and they want to know what you think. The first thing we're going to go to is what was your original gravity and what was your final
Yeah.
gravity. And,
Well, and
if you don't know, it makes it real difficult to talk about it.
That's a question I ask a lot because of the things I've learned and talked about yeast and yeast management and pitching the right amount of yeast.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't pitch the right amount of yeast based on that gravity, and you say, well, what's your gravity? Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, I don't know how much yeast to recommend you to buy. Here, buy 7 packs. I don't know. I can't do it. So you got to know that gravity.
So 7
Right,
is the
you just
default
wanna be
then, right?
precise.
Yeah.
We-
Throwing it out
Only
there.
if it's dry.
you want to be precise
When in
about
doubt,
what
7 packs of yeast.
Yeah.
It's like
Seven-
you said,
seven
Can't
bricks.
overpitch.
If you were
7 500-gram
15
bricks.
to 20 points difference in gravity, and it's already a bigger beer, then you're going to have to go more than one
Yeah.
pack to make sure that it's going to do its job. If it wasn't 1050, but it's 1065.
Yeah, I'll be like, here's 2
May
packs.
as well go higher.
You know, if it's over this, and if you get home and you realize it's not that, just pitch the 1. If it is, go with 2.
Well,
So-
and if someone brings in a beer and man, this didn't finish out that right. It seems like it didn't ferment all the way, and my final gravity was 1025 or something like that. Well, our immediate first question is going to be, what was your original gravity?
Right.
If you don't know that, it makes it really difficult to
'cause it was
diagnose what the hell is going on.
like 1100. 1025 is not a bad finishing gravity.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
So let's start with or go to some of the Greg's notes here. There's three gravity terminologies, right? Pre-boil, original, and final. So
Right.
pre-boil, once you got your extract or once you got all your mash and lauter done, you sparged just before the boil. Take a reading.
Well, I'm
This
gonna pause you for a second.
Okay.
this is for the wort in your kettle.
right.
Let's talk about what that number is. Period.
Okay.
Very good idea.
Specific gravity.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is specific gravity? What does
Right.
it mean?
So that's the amount of sugar in solution, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So water, distilled water, pure water has a specific gravity of 1. There's nothing in it. So when we add sugar,
So it has
Or-
nothing
or-
to do with how much I weigh on Saturn?
Correct.
Oh,
Sure.
I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
So as you add sugar or you add content to the water,
Dissolved solids.
dissolved
basically.
solids, correct, your gravity is going to change. So we're looking at specific gravity. We're looking at the sugar content. What's the sugar content of the liquid? That's what the numbers we're talking about here.
And there's going to be some other things that contribute to that, proteins and that kind of thing. But for the most part, what you're looking at
Right.
in there is sugar. Whether it's fermentable or unfermentable, that's a totally different thing. But it's basically the amount of sugar that's dissolved into the wort. And so pre-boil is exactly what it sounds like
Right.
before you start your boil. Now, personally, I have found that the best way to measure pre-boil gravity is wait until it's boiling and take your pre-boil gravity then.
Yeah, because it's mixed.
Yeah,
It's
because it
gotta be
mixes up better
mixed,
than,
yeah.
you get a much more homogeneous
having
product.
a stir and
Particularly with all grain where you're talking about sparging and running off but also.
But you're going to want a refractometer for that. Because having
Yeah.
to cool down a sample
Yeah.
for
Right.
a hydrometer is
Right.
more of a pain in the ass. But that's why you want a refractometer is to
Right.
start
Yeah.
the
Don't you
process.
still want to cool your sample down? I always take my sample and cool it
There's
down in
supposed
the
to be
freezer.
automatic cooling. I mean, it's just a splash. It should
It-
be cooled down.
a couple
to,
of drops cools off so
Yeah.
quickly that
Yeah.
you can just leave it on there and let it sit for a minute, and you'll be good to go.
Right.
Okay. I always get mine down to like 70 degrees and then check it.
So
well, but at that point,
The problem is you're dealing with evaporation there too, because if you let
Yeah.
it sit down to cool, some is going to evaporate. When
Yeah,
you're
it's
talking
just in
about
the freezer. It takes like
Yeah.
5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer to let it cool in between two plates of
Right.
glass, on your refractometer. But
Oh, right.
So typically we boil for an hour, and we evaporate off some water, some liquid, and we concentrate those sugars. So on the original gravity, which is post-boil, and again, preferably when your wort has cooled somewhat, your gravity reading is expected to have gone up.
right.
It's going to change.
Because
And-
you've
and-
removed water. I want to take a step back real quick. Because we'll go back to when we had Mike Treadway on here. We talked about brewing math before, and this is something that I use a lot. And it's one of the reasons pre-boil gravity is important, is because you can take your pre-boil gravity and you can use that to determine the total gravity units that are in your beer. So let's say you have a 1060 pre-boil gravity and you have 5 gallons of wort. You take that 60 times 5, you end up with the number 300. You have 300 total gravity units
Right.
in there. If you take that, the number that total gravity units will never change. Okay, that's those sugars aren't going anywhere no matter how much you boil. Your gravity will change based on how much water is in
we
there.
take away water.
So
we add
say
water.
you've got 300 gravity units in there, and you're going to boil off a gallon and end up with 4. If you divide 300 by 4, you're going to end up with your expected original gravity. So that's something that's more advanced. Later on, you'll worry about that more for all grain brewing. But that's one of the reasons it's important to note pre-boil gravity, is because you can use it for calculations later on once you know your boil off rate and where you're wanting to fall and that kind of thing. So pre-boil gravity may not be that useful to a beginning brewer, but it is something that you should get used to recording and taking
Yeah.
that sample and knowing it, just because later on, when you start getting into some more advanced techniques, it will be more useful and more important.
Well, if you made a mistake somewhere along the line and you think your volume's one thing, but it's actually a gallon more, well, that pre-boil volume's going to tell you that. Immediately going to tell you
Right.
that that's a difference. And the difference, usually you're going to boil off about a gallon to a gallon and a half in an hour, depending on how intense your boil is. Right. Most of us say keep it fairly mild and even rolling over, but not too aggressive, or else you're going to boil off more and then possibly over
and it'll
caramelize.
depend on the geometry of your kettle
Right,
also.
exactly. And then, but like usually for standard gravity, it's going to be what 8 to 10 points maybe in an hour
Generally.
that you'll change
Yeah.
that gravity. So think about that too. I mean, if you know your end result's supposed to be 1055 and you're in the 1030s, there's going to be something that
there's
you
a-
already either going to have to boil longer, or you're going to have to add some DME or some other kind of sugar in the process. So.
Well, another thing to quickly point out, I don't know how many people pay attention to it, especially new brewers, but your hydrometer that you buy at the store, that is calibrated to read at a particular temperature. And if the beer is colder or warmer than that particular temperature, there is math formulas that are needed to get the correct gravity reading. And they're all calibrated to 60 degrees.
Right.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it does make a difference.
Right.
If it's at 90, that's several
There's
points.
a difference at 90.
It's not several points. It's only like a half a point, really, between 60 and 90. It's not much.
Fight.
I've seen a pretty big. Whenever I've used my calculator for that, and I've checked a sample at 90 to 100 compared to 60, it usually pushes it like 3 or 4 points.
Wow, that's a lot more than
you're-
I've seen. with
So I
mine.
don't. That's
You also look at the higher temp. There's a expansion of the
maybe
fluid.
3.
Here, let me pull up a calculator here real quick. I've got one. No, just so we can
So,
make sure.
That's the
But
same
you know,
one I
a
think I
cold,
used.
you know, a colder liquid is going to be slightly more condensed. A warmer liquid is going to have a little bit more volume. That's why they're calibrated at 60 degrees. So if you can get it close to 60, you're going to get really close.
Okay, so on this calculator, at a 1060 sample gravity at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, we'll read at 1060.
I hope so.
At 100, no, you're right. It's
Yeah.
1067, so it's 7 points different.
Yeah, because I was just
Yeah.
looking at mine.
Yeah,
56
that's a
to
big
95.
difference.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, yeah.
And that has totally saved my night a few times where I was like, "What the f is going on, man? This is driving me nuts." And then I see the temperature change, like, "Oh, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
know?
yeah.
I'm
so-
happy now. Not pissed off anymore."
That's definitely one of the
And
calculators I started keeping handy was
Mhm.
the temperature correction
Mhm,
initially
right.
Yeah.
before I got a actual refractometer, because it drastically changes taking when you write down what temperature you're taking the reading at.
Right.
Yeah.
So that
or
if you
use a
need to make
calculator and
correction
just
later.
correct it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
That's if you have an accurate reading of what the temperature of the
Yeah.
sample is. Yeah, but so that's something important. So let's move on to original gravity. So what does original gravity mean?
So original gravity is at that same point, right? That's post boil.
Fermentation
Post-boil.
starting gravity.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. The
Okay.
temperature or the gravity your wort is going to be at when you put yeast into
Yeah,
it.
this is right before we've added the
Yeah.
yeast. You're ready. I'm going to throw the yeast in. We'll grab a quick sample, see where we're starting from. So original gravity and starting gravity would be another way of thinking about it.
Right. And this is another extraordinarily important measurement that gets overlooked by new home brewers. And the reason it's so important in terms of where is it at versus what you expected it to be is it will change the way your beer tastes if you have a recipe that's formulated with the IBUs and all that to balance out at a certain gravity,
Right.
and you're 10 points higher, but you haven't adjusted your bitterness or anything like that, it will make a difference. So it's important to try and get as close to your original gravity as possible. Or if you're brewing all grain and you're going to miss your original gravity, to make an adjustment to your bittering
Right.
and that kind of thing.
That's something that's going to come with experience and
Right.
practice, right?
But all the more reason that from the very beginning,
to
get
get to
used
the
to
habit.
making sure
Yep.
that you take
Take
your
that reading.
gravity reading and you record it and
Yeah.
you remember what it is, because when you walk into the shop and say, this doesn't taste like I thought it would, what could I do different?
Yeah.
What was your starting gravity? What was your original gravity, or your finishing gravity? Are the two questions that I would typically ask first.
Right.
So.
And so that would bring us to the final gravity or finishing gravity is
Post-fermentation.
post-fermentation. It's when the yeast has done what it can do.
There's no more activity.
There's no more activity. This is what you end up with. And so that's another question. Well, my beer isn't bubbling anymore. Is it done? I don't know. What was your gravity reading? Oh, I didn't take one.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Right.
go home, get your gravity reading today, do another one tomorrow, and if they're the same, you're probably done.
Yeah. Typically.
Plus, what was
Or-
what was your starting gravity?
Or
Or
it's
it's
still at
stalled.
10:25. It's stalled
Yeah.
out. Yeah. Okay. Now we need to
Yeah.
figure out what we need to do.
Well,
to
it's
to
at
fix
10:30 and it
Yeah.
started at 10:60. Okay, well, there's a problem.
that. Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And see, that's something that I think it's the original gravity and final gravity that matter the most when you want to
Yes.
change or fix something, and because what you can do in that process to change or
Right.
fix that thing. So if it's original gravity and you're going to be low because say you had a refractometer and you took a reading and you found out, man, I'm about to go to flame out, I'm 8 points low. Well, then that's when you need to have some DME on hand or maybe even some dextrose, depending
Yeah.
on the style.
Yeah.
Something like that to add sugar to it. Because usually it's better to do that than it is to say, well, I'm going to boil for an extra 30 minutes, because now you've just changed what the bittering
Changed the
is
bittering.
happening
Right.
with your hop additions. So
I think there's a pride thing too with that people feel like I feel like I'm cheating or I'm not doing it right if I add this in to get the numbers right, and I don't
no,
like that at all.
That's why it's there.
Maybe you work from brew to make sure you don't have to do that, but I'd sure rather make sure that the beer came out right, or if it doesn't come out right, it's not because of that.
And it's a lot easier to fix it still in the boil,
Right. It's
than
so
it is
much
to try
easier
to
to
fix
fix
it
it
in
then.
fermentation. Because if your fermentation, like you mentioned it earlier, if it stalls out at 1025, and it depends on the yeast you're using, maybe you underpitched, or maybe it's a type of yeast that you're using needs to be warmer, and then it'll just kick right back up and finish out. Like if it's a Belgian Saison yeast or something, they're known to do that. Kick it up to 80 degrees. Next thing you know, the thing finishes it out and dries right down to, much lower than you expected,
And this is something that Nigel has gotten really good at. He came to me a lot in his early days with
You having
with
to fix
all
stuff
grain.
all the time?
When his gravities and it's his pre-boil, he's a little short. I fix it at
Hey,
the
I'm
beginning.
5'10", all right?
I have that happen periodically, and I have just gotten I just know how long to boil for prior to starting my timer. It's something that's learned over time, and so Nigel would text me and say, "Hey, I'm this many points low. How long should I boil?" And I'd throw a number at him, and he'd boil for that long, and then he'd start his timer, and he was hitting his gravities all the time. And he's doing it on his own now. Nigel has figured
So
it.
basically, Mikey is the reason that you're
No.
a good brewer
No,
now.
I
is what it's
actually
come down
ignored him
to.
and went to Greg and
Yeah.
double check with Greg. So
Nigel now, when we brew together, he'll be like, "Hey, I'm 2 points low," or whatever it is, and he knows what he's doing, and we just bounce it off of each other. So it's really fun to see how someone has
to see your mentee,
right, my mentee,
your prodigy.
to see someone pick that up.
Nigel's face right now is
No,
priceless.
I think it's fun to see Nigel pick that up.
Yay,
to where he's and
Where's the shoe?
to hear him tell customers the same thing.
it's on my feet right now. Both of them.
to see his boy grow up and
That's right, yeah.
following his
Nigel
footsteps.
all grown up.
It's like a proud
Papa.
papa, isn't it? Yeah. No, and to be fair, Mikey's right. I did used to bug him a lot, but it's something. I think if anything, I'm an example of, hey, keep doing it. You'll learn. You'll get there. You'll understand your system. You'll understand what your points raise is going to be during the boil. What you're expecting out of different yeasts, and yeah, just it's just experience and knowledge.
But the people that I've known that have gone from beginner to being really good, really quick, like you and Pete, our two in particular, that really went fast from beginning to being good, were the people that really pay attention to every little detail like that. And this is one of those
and brew with a lot of different people.
I think, and brew with a lot of different people.
And have Mikey to teach me.
No.
And
I
have
didn't
such a
help
wonderful
Pete.
mentor like Mike.
I didn't help Pete. That was Greg.
And ask questions, even if they are WTF. Ask questions.
But paying attention to things like this that a lot of beginning brewers skip over because they don't think it's important. They just they don't realize the importance of it. Well, pay attention to it. Then you could figure out whether or not it's important later on.
Because you got a lot of problem solving area to work through before you get done with a beer. Because like when we're talking about the last part of this is trying to fix something after fermentation, it's a lot harder to do anything if it's not yeast based. You can add more yeast, may or may not do the job that you want it to, depending on the beer. Well, there's a lot to get into with that, but the other thing is adding sugar after the fact. It's sort of a pain in the ass. So,
Yeah.
So just as a recap here, we talked about 3 different types: pre-boil gravity, original gravity, you might see it as OG, final gravity, you might see it as FG, and then get a brewing software calculator to put your OG and your FG, and then it will show you your
What'd you call me?
That's your ABV.
your ABV, your alcohol by volume. So, and that's going to be your 4.8% beer or your 8.2% beer, or in the case of this fine double chocolate stout, and I may have described that incorrectly.
Which cherry chocolate
double,
stuff.
yeah, it's 15%.
15.1.
15%?
Yes.
Holy
No,
crap.
that's not.
Is it
Are
really
you
good?
kidding?
Wow, that's smooth for 15.
Yes,
man.
it is.
Because I was going to
There's
stop us
no
in the
heat
middle
to
of this
this.
and say how much I thought it was a fantastic beer. What an outstanding beer! I can't believe that's 15%.
We're good at that. We hide stuff.
Very, very nice.
Well, hidden.
Yeah,
That's
you're
gonna
hiding
get you
that
into trouble, that
really
is.
well.
Until everybody falls out of their chair in a minute.
Right.
It's going to be one of those
So much
nights.
for driving home tonight.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
So-
the only other one that we could throw in on that too would be final runnings. Gravity is something to check, and that's something that you want to apply when you're an all grain brewer,
Mhm.
and it's just going to tell you your efficiency more so. So it's also, you would just like say if you're transferring from one kettle to the other, you just go over to your mash tun and take a reading right off the spigot to see where it's at, running from there, and then check that against your pre-boil, and then add them all together, and that's where you're getting some efficiencies. So.
If you use a software like Beersmith, it'll have a whole lot of calculators in there, and it's going to give you a whole lot of estimations.
I think
Right.
they all do pretty much. Don't
Brewer's
they?
Friend,
Brew Pal. They've
Brew
all got
Pal,
one in
they're
there.
they're all going to give you, based on a sugar content of grain, based on the amount of grain, they're going to tell you, we think you're going to get this much sugar, and it's going to tell you an OG, it's going to tell you an FG based on your yeast. So you can get a lot of that information without having to do the math. If you want to do the math, there's a great book called Designing Great Beers. We sell it at the
Yeah.
store, and it will tell you, it's a great book because it gives you, and it's several years old, but
Yeah.
it'll still give you a lot of info about the hops that are out at the time, the malts, and it tells you how to come up with a recipe based on, I want this gravity. Okay, well, based on that gravity, you need this much of this grain versus this grain. So it's a fun book to read and learn the math behind all these computer programs.
Math is fun.
Math is fun.
Yay!
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It really is.
This is not a math show.
but
Beer
guys.
math is fun.
Beer math that like makes sense like this, like you see the product at the end, that's fun math to me. So, if math could be fun.
If only.
This is about as
Says
fun
an
as
English
math.
major.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
This means that
So-
we're mathletes.
We're not mathletes. We're beer leets.
Calculator.
Did he say mathletes?
I,
No, that's more of an East Texas.
Wow.
Okay, sorry.
I do say I would say I've got a mathlete's physique though.
Yes, definitely.
I have mathlete's foot.
I don't know what your physique is, but it's something else.
Yeah, it changes from week to week.
It's something else. So should we do the unsolicited answers or just move on at this stage?
Well,
Well,
where are
one
we
of
at
those is-
time wise, Eric?
What about 45?
Nobody asked for our opinion, but we're giving it to you anyway.
That was a live rendition. He
Wow.
was.
That's right.
Now, time for a live rendition of unsolicited answers to internet questions.
I guess we're not
I
moving
think the
on.
live might be better.
Yes, that's right.
It is.
I like
Yeah,
it live a lot better.
From now on, no more bumpers. We're gonna do them live.
Oh crap!
No soundboard.
Hey, yikes!
So
I don't have it
a
in
couple
front
of
of me.
questions this week. Both of them have to do with kegging.
I had
First
to
one.
fix your spelling error in there, though.
Well, I didn't. Where? In the actual
Yeah,
paragraphs?
One of those questions.
Well, I'm
It's
just
like-
copy and paste.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, that's all copy and
It's
paste.
carboning.
Yeah, Mikey. They're supposed to be fresh from the
Hey,
internet, dude.
I like carboning.
As they're
That's-
as they're
fun.
stated. That's kind of
Okay.
the point.
Well, let me read it then.
Well,
I
read
can
it.
tell you which one was.
Don't bog, don't bog,
Let's
don't
see.
bog.
All right.
Yeah, is this?
Oh, it was the second one. It was the second one. I know where it was. Okay.
Okay, we'll start with the second one.
The second one. Hey guys, just looking for some quick advice.
It says hi, not hey.
I'm sorry. Hi guys. I have a keg that is not
You spelled
holding.
that wrong.
Work in these conditions.
Is that high HI or HAI or
It's
HIGH?
No, it says HI.
All of the above.
Assuming you copied and pasted it correctly, it's HI.
I have a keg that is not holding carbon or something was what it said.
Ruined.
That's where he fell asleep and his fingers just.
It's not holding
Yeah.
carbonara.
You see what 15% beer
Yeah,
does to
right?
us?
Anyway, just looking for some quick advice. I have a keg that's not holding carbonation. Can I just siphon the beer back out and into a new keg without harm? I racked it on Sunday and the carbonation is leaking. Any advice? Thanks.
Carbonation is leaking.
Plug it.
The carbonation is leaking. Or is it
They're,
the CO2?
both of these questions
When
are
you're
like
new, you
this.
don't
They're,
know what
they're
it's
obviously
called.
new to, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
to-
where is it leaking from?
Exactly.
That's the first thing to answer.
Well,
actually,
no,
yeah.
see, but I'm not sure though. Is he saying I can't get this beer carbonated, Or
He's
is he
talking about
saying that
losing
the keg
gas.
is losing CO2?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Can't probably push beer.
It is not holding carbonation.
Because if it's unable to get it to carbonate,
That's a big leak.
That's
it,
different.
it could be a big leak, or he has the wrong temperature.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like if
true.
he's trying to
Temperature,
carbonate at
yeah.
room temperature, he's
Yeah.
going to have a real
Yeah.
hard time.
To me, this one reads like it's not holding gas, and even if he has it carbonated, it's not pushing at some point, which pretty much means somewhere in that keg you're losing gas, and you need to tighten some fittings and probably get some keg lube.
There
Yeah,
is
so
nothing on a keg.
Keg lube is
that-
a wonderful tool.
There's nothing on a keg associated with holding pressure that can't be changed out while there's beer in the keg.
Yeah,
So that's
just
I would
release
say,
the pressure first.
Yeah, if you need if you need
That's
to
a bad
change
idea.
gaskets or O-rings or anything like that, you can do that with the beer in the keg.
Just make sure you
If
clean and
there's
sanitize
nothing on it
prior to
that-
putting back
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
a dit tube or.
So I
yeah.
wouldn't siphon finished beer from one vessel to another if I could
Just
possibly help it.
because.
I would just go buy new O-rings. And
You
stuff
should
like
you
that.
should be able to fix it.
First, I would get some Star Sand and water, some soapy water, and spray the keg down and figure
Right.
out where's
Figure out where your
leaking.
leak is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Is it
hole in the side of the body of the keg. That's a problem.
Yes, it's not getting fixed.
You know?
You squirt it down. Look for where the carbonation is coming out.
Yeah.
There's a bullet wound or something.
When you shot your keg at
When
the
I was
family
using it for
reunion,
target practice,
you know that kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
it could be anything, right? It could be the post, it could be the relief valve, it could
Yeah,
be it could
and
be the
usually it's the
seals.
post, or if it's not that, it might be the line.
Or the
you know?
lid,
Or
the
the
lid
lid.
not
Lid's
seating
bad.
correctly, and that's not even necessarily that anything needs to be changed out. A lot of times you just need to
Move it,
get it seated better.
jiggle.
Turn it 180
or
something.
enough
Maybe it
pressure
fits
Yeah.
behind
one
it.
way.
will
Right,
hold it,
right. Ramp
so-
up the pressure to really press it into place, and then bleed off the pressure.
And like Greg
back to where
said,
you need it to be.
keg lube.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
And don't
A little
overlube.
bit of KY.
You don't want to overlube because if you overlube the lid O-ring, you won't seal. So it just needs to be moistened.
There's a Patriots joke in there
Yeah,
somewhere.
I'm sure.
Robert Kraft.
Well, actually, too.
Topical,
I've
huh?
seen with sometimes you'll get an O-ring that just doesn't quite fit
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
keg,
Yeah.
that lid, and if you do apply it more
A
liberally,
little bit, yeah.
it will seal all the
Yeah.
holes and everything will even out under pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
you're
there's
still checking it though.
Yeah. I mean, find out where that leak is first.
Sometimes,
simple solution.
Sometimes this can also be a result of not turning the pressure up high enough either. There are some
Yeah.
people
Right.
that think that you need to keep it at like 3 or 4 psi, and sometimes
No.
they just won't seal if the
Yeah,
pressure's
right.
not
I've got
up
a
high
handful of
enough.
kegs
Yeah.
that they've got to be
takes
at
more.
12 psi for it to seal,
Yeah.
and then it'll hold the pressure.
That's
when I
usually an
lower it.
O-ring thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, that again could be sealed up with a little bit of keg lube, might
Mhm.
solve that problem. It's just one of those things. Kegs are weird, man. They've been through some beatings usually. So
Yeah.
Well, and I like to emphasize to customers buying our used kegs is these kegs are very, very old.
Yeah.
They're older.
all
than,
used kegs.
They're older than us, significantly. So if you're buying a new keg, that's the advantage of the new keg is all the pieces are new. It's pressure tested.
Well, maybe not older than all of us.
Only $50 more.
and $50 more.
you.
Yeah.
okay,
anyway.
Nigel might be the same age as some of our kegs.
Eric's older than I am.
Yeah. I'll take
Hey, Eric's older.
qualifier.
Definitely not Chris.
I'm corny keg age. That's what-
So
He drank soda out of one of those at one
I'm
point.
sure he probably did a keg stand on one of them at one point.
my mom used to bottle her breast milk in those. When I was a child.
Jesus.
Just hold the tap to my lips. It was great.
Explains so much.
Baby hacks.
All right, so
how about that other question?
She did
So-
that for me too.
There we go.
Shots fired.
Slow clap.
wow.
Oh,
All right, so
it's getting
our
deep
other
in here.
our,
That's
our
so-
other question
That's
is
so more satisfying than any shoe thrown.
other CO2 question is for forced carbonating. What size cylinder do you think I'll need for forced carbonating a 5-gallon batch? Also, how much do you think I'll use for each batch?
You'll need at least one 20-pound cylinder for each 5-gallon batch.
Maybe a 50.
And then someone cuts off right there and has to go out and buy a whole bunch of.
No,
No,
I have a 5-pound cylinder, which is really the smallest you can buy, and I can carbonate and serve
Mark.
6, 7 kegs out of that, no problem.
Oh yeah,
I-
10.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I can.
And that's including some cleaning and line,
that's
line
including cleaning
pressurizing
and all that,
things
yeah.
like that. So.
I tell people depending on how often you use it, how often you're carbonating and whatnot, but for a beginning home brewer that's brewing 1 or 2, they're going to get 3 or 4 months easily of use out of a
possibly
cylinder.
longer,
and probably longer. I probably fill a tank 3 to 4 times a year, and I've got a 5-gallon or 5-pound tank. Sorry, so.
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
So don't worry about buying the small tank. That'll last you a long time.
Especially when you're getting started. I mean, even now I have 2 5-pounders, and they last for a long time.
They do.
The only time, really, the main reason I think that I lose and I have to get a refill sooner, and that's after maybe 5-6 kegs, whatever, is because I'm wasting a lot of CO2 by cleaning, pressurizing, deep pressure, like whatever. I'm just running things through, cleaning lines and that kind of thing. And then when I store kegs, I'm pressurizing, letting the gas out, letting oxygen out, pressurizing, getting more CO2 in there, that kind of
Do
thing.
you purge your fermenter with CO2 when you first start fermenting, right after you pitch? Do you ever get your CO2?
No.
Depends on the beer.
No.
I've done it.
that.
Depends on the beer.
Just because
Well,
I don't know why.
Sours, I would.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
sours maybe, but
Yeah,
for regular beers, when you pitch, it's okay if oxygen
you
is
need
present,
oxygen.
and then
I've done
CO2
that.
is going to
Generally,
push
you
it
put
all
oxygen
out.
in.
I've done that
Right.
for I've done that for some IPAs with a whole lot of hop character. I'm aiming at the whole lot of hop character in like a secondary. I've done it for that.
I think I've done it mainly like because I've always been a little dodgy about checking that final gravity because I don't want to, infect my beer somehow. And so when I go in and I check the gravity and then I'm going to put the airlock back on, then I do purge it out at that time every time. So.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest reason to have the larger CO2 tanks is that it's inevitable that at some point there's going to be a time when you run out of CO2 right at the beginning of a party or on a Sunday afternoon
I
or
think
something
that's
like
when to
that
have a
at a
big one.
really
Yeah.
inconvenient time. So that'll just happen less often if you have a big tank.
Yeah, and if
Yeah,
you're
10
running
pounders.
a kegerator with 5 different kegs in there or something,
Right.
maybe so. But
A 5-pounder will pretty much do the job for almost anybody most of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I know a few
That's what
people
she
who get a
said.
20-pounder and then they rarely ever have to refill it. And they are people that do a lot of kegging, so.
Yeah,
And
I
a lot
have
of
a 20
serving.
pounder in my big kegerator, and I almost never have to fill it.
So, yeah.
I think
And
I've
then
only
it's always
filled it
there.
twice.
It's not about
And
the
if you ever,
size. It's
you
how
want a
you use it.
20-pounder,
That's right.
then you just, that one time that you just want to fill the whole room up with CO2 and have a party, then you got that,
see if
that
everybody
going
passes
for you.
out or
Yeah.
something. Or what?
You purge the room.
I
instead
want
of
to
just
kill
getting-
all my friends.
When you're angry and you're Brandon and everyone comes over to your
Can't
your
stand the
shop,
smell
he just closes all the doors.
We had an accident once, and we accidentally filled our entire car with CO2.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Like
that's
we
a bad
pulled
day.
over on the side of the road, and smoke's coming out. And people
Been
are
there.
looking at us like there's a bomb.
That was different smoke where you
Been there.
Department of Homeland Security comes, confiscates your car.
Mine rolled in the back seat. It rolled and hit one of the rails under the seat and popped it open and just started, and I was just like, holy shit! At a stoplight down the road, I'd jump out. Like you said, gas. I could barely get into the back to even see it to grab it, and I'm like not wanting to grab the actual valve because it's so cold already, So yeah,
But
it's
but it does. It takes the air completely out.
yeah,
So you-
pushes it out.
Like you freak out. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's a little scary.
I forgot that story.
Yeah.
That's a
we were
great
like
one.
right in front of Chick-fil-A. So there's like all these moms and kids like looking at us with like this bomb car.
Over there.
And one man's
Terrorists.
like, "Are y'all okay?"
One man was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
All right.
High off CO2.
All right. Well, that kind of
Well, at
covers
least you got out of the
everything
car.
I
That's
think
the
that
main
we
thing.
had for the first half. So let's go to break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk to
Jump into
903 about pastry beers.
All right.
If the cherry chocolate stout we had is any indication, I
Oh,
think it's
goodness.
going
There
to
are
be
no
an
experiments.
excellent second half. So
Well, I'll talk about that.
listen to the Many Colored Death melt your face, and we will be back in a few.
Chris just bought me donuts.
All right, no more chips.
All right, and back to anger issues with
This
Nigel.
is Macy Moore from Hop Fusion Ale Works. Come and brew it. Cheers.
It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday, Macy.
Happy birthday, Mason.
Cheers, Mason.
Happy birthday, Macy.
I don't care about your birthday, Macy.
Damn. That was Stubby. Stubby said that.
No, that's not specific to Macy. I just don't care about people's birthdays when they're 40 years old or plus. I mean, I think it's silly that we celebrate birthdays when we're 40 years old.
Well,
It's a
mine's-
celebration of your life. man.
Mine will be here in a couple of weeks, so
Yeah.
you're not invited.
Your 40th?
Yeah, my yes.
And mine will follow very shortly.
Your 40th?
Yeah.
His 39th, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome back.
Welcome
Everybody
back.
else has a plate of donuts in front of them that
Yes,
we're going to
they
get to
do.
later. And I have specifically requested that my plate of donuts be kept across the room because I can't be trusted
And
with
these are
them.
homemade donuts. Like these are made.
Well, no, technically they're store made.
Well, but
I mean,
No, keep it over there.
Is the
Dude,
store
really,
in somebody's
seriously.
house? Does somebody live in the store?
yes.
Then they're homemade.
A homeless guy lives out, so they're homeless made.
homeless made.
Stop eating chips
No
in the
chips.
microphone, dude.
I gotta say, that's really gonna bug
You know,
me.
that's my bag of chips that I put away from myself so I wouldn't eat them in front of the microphone, and he grabbed them and ate them in front of the microphone.
food
right.
and podcasts
Dick.
do not mix.
Which is why we have a donut pairing.
Yeah,
Right.
except for the donuts.
Except
yeah.
donuts.
Yeah.
They're
Donuts are
not crunchy.
great.
They're kind of crunchy, but yeah.
All right, so we're going to get to our guest that we have in studio here, which is 903 Brewers. They're out of Sherman, Texas, which, if anybody is not familiar with North Texas, it's
It's north of here.
almost Oklahoma.
Do
You
we
can-
need
Almost.
to do Patreon stuff as well?
Oh, do we?
Patron
Yeah, we
stuff.
did come back from a break. Yeah.
Man,
Okay,
you wrecked
so
my whole flow.
Sorry, dude.
I really
that's
was.
what happens.
You were premature.
We didn't have a coupon code of the week, but
Story
we
of my
do have a
life.
listen and win key phrase. Is for a $20 gift certificate, and to go with the theme of the night, the key phrase is diabetes.
Yeah, you have to type it. With,
Diabetes.
you have
That's
to
the
type
Wi-
it, type
the
it with the
Wilford-
emphasis too.
Yes, the
Wilford
Wilford Brimley pronunciation.
Yes, diabetes.
Diabetes.
As we're all going to be suffering from as we leave here.
God, I hope so.
All right, over to you, Brandon.
Mikey hopes that we're all diabetic when we
he's
leave
in,
here.
He's in the medical
Right.
field,
He's part
right?
of the
It's
medical
dark,
field.
man.
It's profit
That just
sharing.
keeps him busy in work.
You know you have no
That's
shortage of
easy.
customers, right? You know they're gonna walk in.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay, so 903 Brewers, which are up in Sherman, Texas, which is far, far north Texas. It's right up near the Oklahoma border, just north of Dallas.
It's near Canada.
And how long have
It's
y'all been
God's
around now?
country.
You're one of our original Dallas Fort Worth
Yeah.
breweries, really.
Yeah, so we opened our doors. We sold our first beer in June of 2013.
Because good things happen in June.
That's right.
It better not be your birthday because
That's when all
Brandon
the,
doesn't
that's
care
when all the
about it.
handsome people were born. That's right. So tell us about how you started out and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, tell us
because-
about the company, man.
Well, so, this homebrew store has a lot of ties towards 903, right? And especially Stubby. He probably wants to kill us, but, I mean, he probably wants to kill most people, right?
This is true.
He's
yeah.
super.
That's a daily thing.
He's
Yeah.
super angry.
He's really a good guy.
all of this is just a way to get us into one place so he can kill us all at the same time.
When he was
With the CO2
Slowly.
tank, I think.
standing behind that window, I keep looking back. Like, he is gone, right? Like, he's no longer here.
Yeah, no, he left. He
Okay,
left.
good.
Say whatever you want.
Okay, I will.
It's
So,
not on public record.
so Austin Jones is a guy that everybody knows Austin, right?
Right.
He's a guy that I look up to. Like,
How can you?
Does he
He's 4
stand
foot
on a lot of
four.
Maybe
stools?
down to,
man,
Y'all are brutal.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Austin.
sorry. Welcome to the second half.
yeah.
Sorry, not
Sorry, Austin. 15% beers gets these guys,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I was hanging out at Raw and Sons, and Raw is like, is my brewery, right? Like that I love to go to. Iron Thistle was my first Texas craft beer, and still one of my
That's a good-
favorites.
That's a good way to start.
Yeah, it's an amazing beer. And so I'll never forget, I was hanging out at Raw and Sons, and like over towards the corner, there was these guys just like huddling around just a pot. And so I asked Austin one day, I was hanging out at the brewery, I said, what are these guys doing? He said, oh, they're home brewers. I was like, what? You can brew beer at home? And he was like, yeah, there's a homebrew store here in Fort Worth. So I immediately drove over. Natalie was actually getting a haircut in downtown Fort Worth. So I immediately drove over here, and store looks a lot different than it does today.
Yeah, it does.
That's
Whole
for
lot
sure,
different.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember walked in. Stubby, I think, was the only employee. His dad, I think, was helping work. And so immediately, like, I get $400 or $500 worth at the time. Today would probably be like $5,000 worth of equipment, right? and I'm getting it all. And I pull out my American Express my American Express credit card, and Stubby's like, "We don't take American Express."
Yeah.
And so I felt really bad, and I told him, I said, "Well, I'm going to go home and get a check, and I'll be back." Or from Natalie. I never came back. So Stubby still hates me today because he had to put everything back up one at a time.
Well, you know, it's funny. For years, I always used to tell him, I wish you would accept American Express because it's what I use for my work expenses, and I'm the only one who sees that credit card bill. And boy, it sure would be easier to bury a few things.
And we now do.
And now we do.
Now we do.
Took a while to get there.
So funny part about that was I came back a month later, and I tell Stubby, I'm like, okay, here, I'm back. I'm gonna get everything again. So he pulls everything back out, and then he's pulling everything from all across the store. And at the time, it was like the size of this room, but it seemed big. And then he's like, okay, that'll be, I think it was like almost $400. And I was like, you do take American Express, right? And the look on his face was, I am going to kill you. Because I thought he was going to have to put it all back. But, man, the crowd's great here. They laugh at my jokes. But anyway, that was it. So I tell everybody when they're getting into brewing, I'm like, once you start, it never stops. You're going to always spend money. But he took me over to the new store. And I'm amazed.
Right.
Not at the size, at the new equipment. He was showing me a piece of equipment that it's got a Bluetooth. He's like, you don't even have to wake up to heat the water. You just set it. And
Grandfather.
Yeah. That's not brewing.
Yeah, that's one of the things I talk about all the time. When I first started, we were drilling the holes in the bottom of buckets to make a mash tun. You'd drill a bunch of holes in the bottom and then put it inside another bucket, and that was your false bottom. My first mash tun was a bucket that I drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom of, and now there's nothing that you need that you can't buy that's purpose made. You know, it's so much better than it used to be.
Did you use your feet to propel your car as well?
He still does that.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember back when, I mean, you're talking about the old shop, that was still, like when we had the first event, one of the first events here, you and Martin House and Rabbit Hole and I think
Noble Ray.
Noble Ray,
yeah.
Y'all were all here serving some beers, you know, and nobody actually had I think Martin House was the closest one to actually having a place, and they still didn't have a place as far as I know at the time.
No, I think Martin House opened like a couple of months after that.
Okay, maybe they were the only ones
6
then.
months later.
But that was it. Everybody else was serving beer, and we had a huge turnout, just local home brewers and whatnot, you know. But this was all back when we had the hallway of a shop, and half of it was closed off because of the way the rooms were built, and we had this tiny little room and about 200 people in there just drinking beers in this tiny little room.
Man, that must have been packed.
It was crowded.
That was a small area at the very beginning.
It was cold out, so like people were coming in and out. It was interesting, but I mean, back in the day, and then it wasn't all that long after that I remember seeing you at GABF, man. So it's like, you know, like, hey, look where you are now. You know, it wasn't that much gap of time. So, but y'all made it work. I mean, you got out there, you built a brewery, and then you've only expanded since then. Like, tell us a little bit more about, you know, what's going on, what you have had happening, and like the schoolhouse and where things are going, things like that. Like, especially, you know, you started with a core lineup, like most people did here, but you've expanded that greatly with canning and whatnot. So, like, you do a lot of different beers now. I mean, tell us about what's behind all that.
So our original system was a barrel and a half, and Stubby built that for us. And, you know, what's crazy is, like, when people come in and they see where we started, they're like, this can be us one day. And I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I made it look easy, because it was you know, for how small that we started, we had no money, right?
Right.
And so, you know, my whole thing is you know, the hardest step to take is the first one. The rest are easy. You just really got to be dumb enough to take the second step. So, you know, I mean, literally, like, I brewed on that barrel and a half system for a little over a year, and we were brewing 2, sometimes 3 batches a day just to keep up with our tap room and what little, you know, just draft accounts that we had throughout North Texas. And then, you know, after that, we upgraded to a 7-barrel a little after a year. That was still too small, but, you know, we just didn't have any money. So we had to do what we could do to make things work. And then 2 years after that, we upgraded to a 30-barrel system, and that's really where we should have started out. And but at the time, we were just doing everything that we can to, to keep the beer that we needed to out on the market. And when we first opened our doors, we had 2 beers. We had the Chosen One, which is a cream ale base, and we actually use a toasted coconut into it. And then the other one was a red ale, an amber. And there's a college in Sherman called Austin College, so we named it after their mascot, Rouge Red Ale. And, I love that beer. Both of those beers we brewed in the kitchen before Natalie's like, you're making too big of a mess. Let's go to the garage, right? And so, for me, the coolest part was a beer that we made together in our kitchen, to see it on tap at a local pub or, at an account throughout North Texas was really neat. But the thing about that we talk about all the time in the brewery in our meetings is the game is changing so fast.
Right.
So what we try to do is we have our ears on the ground. One thing that that I think our team has done a great job at is like listening to the customer. A lot of people, especially in breweries, like they get off social media because look, everybody's an expert. Everybody has a beer of yours that is the most disgusting beer they ever put in their mouth, right? But what you've got to do is you've got to find the people that love it, or you got to find the people that what's the next big beer other than a hazy IPA, right? And so like how do you find that? And so one of the things that we pride ourselves on at 903 and kind of just jump into what we brought today is we're a majority woman-owned brewery. We employ more women than we do men. And whenever, we're hanging out at the brewery, Natalie and I, we're both the founders, everybody wants to talk to me. And I'm like, why do you want to talk to me? And most of the time because I think,
well, the beard.
Yeah, you're a beard or because you're a man. And, the cool thing about is, our glycol lines at the brewery, she put all the glycol lines up in high heels and a mini skirt. Right? I mean, she was on the ladder, on the scissor lift, putting all this together. And, she's the one who built the brewery. And so, the girls all kind of came up with a name called, Down with the Pastryarchy. Because in the beer world, you think of all men. But let me tell you, man, women are coming for it.
Right.
And, their creativity and the things that they're doing and the things that they're thinking about, for me, as a business person and as a salesperson and as a marketing person, I'm like, we got to listen to it. And, these line of pastry beers, at first people kind of laughed at us, but after they drink them, they're not laughing anymore, are they? I mean, we're selling the heck out of it. So, once, is it okay if we jump in and kind of talk about the beers?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've kind of got them in the lineup to go down that we're going to pour, but if you want to talk a little bit about Natalie, about the first one is the blueberry donut.
Yeah, so the first one we got today is a blueberry cake donut cream ale. So we paired with our friends in Sherman, Momo's Donuts, and he provided all the blueberry cake donuts for us. So to brew this beer, we put how many pounds?
150 pounds.
150 pounds of blueberry donuts into the mash. Wow. And so we, transfer it over, ferment it, and then after fermentation, we add in blueberry puree as well.
You got to be careful. Budweiser's going to make a Super Bowl commercial out of this one.
Yeah, I know.
Our
right?
beers don't have any donuts in them.
But what's
Donut
funny about all
delivery.
these pastry beers is people are like, I'll try it, and they have pretty low expectations, and they're like, oh man, yeah, I'll have a couple of pints of those.
Oh yeah. Well, people are always shying away from beers that sound like they're challenging, and then they like them. It's always the
Yes.
case,
Yeah.
Very rarely it's maybe if you said, "Oh, it's something or other sour beer," then they might not. But
Gone.
typically, yeah, they're gonna like it.
It's gone. Oh, you're trying to show it to the camera? Okay.
That's good.
I was going to read.
Sorry, I forgot we were
You
doing
didn't
a
bring
show
Yeah,
here.
two of those, did you?
So, it is, we added 300 pounds of blueberry puree. And I think when we transferred over into the bright tank was about 27 barrels. We added vanilla to it. And so we added more blueberry puree just because we wanted that blueberry color. It's a little tart. So when you think of like, man, I'm a fat kid. So like I'm gonna mention this over and over. When you think of like a blueberry donut, like just all that flavor when you take that bite and you get it, like the blueberry comes straight out of the gate and then it finishes with just a little bit of vanilla and then a little bit of tartness on the back end. But
I
man,
think the vanilla really gives you that kind of frosting type of flavor, like a
Yeah.
frosted donut.
It really brings out the paste. It really brings out like the
Yeah.
pastry-ness.
Yeah, you're right.
If that's a word.
And that's the cool thing about vanilla is vanilla by itself, it's not necessarily that the vanilla flavor, it's what it does to other flavors in there.
Right.
It makes chocolate pop, or it makes the blueberry
It's an
pop in a
enhancer.
different way. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
enhancer.
And it's like with this, I definitely get the blueberry. It has a distinct blueberry character, but I also get the donut.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely,
like you said,
yeah.
and I think that the vanilla plays a huge part in that.
So what was the thought process of let's go get some donuts or?
well, look at me, Nigel. I'm a big
Hey,
kid,
you
right?
and me both. Right?
We got a room full of
So-
that going on
yeah.
here.
So, the thing about it is like 903, like when we came up with the name of the brewery, we didn't want to name it, Natalie Brewing Company or Jeremy Brewing Company. Like we were, no offense, no disrespect to RAR, but, because they've been in the industry for a long time,
Yeah.
but, and I love them and I love Fritz. I go on about that. So, but 903 represents our area codes, the whole northeast part of Texas. So we, it's our community.
Yeah.
So we want to do collaborations. Like when you think of collaborations in the industry, you think of, like collaborating with other breweries. But like, man, there's so many talented, amazing businesses in our town. So like, Momo's Donuts, like we love going and eating their donuts. So like, let's collaborate with him. Let's get their donuts and let's make a beer. And he's such a cool guy if you ever come up there and meet him. But like, once you do that and we talked to him and said, hey, we're going to use your donuts for a beer, he was like, let's do it. And, we put his name on the can, and it was so good because, like, we picked up 10 new draft accounts because of him. Like, people who followed him. And then for us, we went after and, we brought his donuts to the brewery, and people were like, where's that located at? And then they go to his store, right? So it's all about co-marketing.
Right.
And that's what we were wanting to do with it.
Increasing the diversity. Yeah.
I think that's one of the really cool things that gets lost in today's society, where everything is, it's global or countrywide, where we expect that we should be able to get every beer that's made in the country anywhere all the time. And I've talked about it before, where I kind of like the idea that you can't always get everything everywhere. You have to go somewhere to get certain things, and that's part of the experience of going to that place, is getting the things that kind of personify what that community is about while you're there, and gives you a better understanding for where it is. And so what you're talking about, using a local, business icon, basically someone that's respected enough that just being involved with them gave you 10 new accounts. That's the personality of Northeast Texas, and you go there and you get the beer, and it helps you appreciate that area that you're in. I like that part of it.
Well, and I love going places and asking people, all right, what's the local restaurant? What's the local brewery? Not the
Right.
brewery that I can get back home, but
You're in a place, you want to experience
Yeah.
the place. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's fun about it for us is just visiting with other small business owners. Like, owning your own business is a weird thing. Like, it's just
It's a lot
very
like taking off your
unique.
pants and running backwards through a cornfield.
Very
Yeah.
much so. And so to share those experiences with
You
these
speak a lot about
guys
that.
and make it fun.
I think he likes to do that.
It's
We'll probably have some footage somewhere.
Sorry, I feel like I brought everything to a screeching halt.
so
with that.
so the next beer we're passing around
I would
is
hope so.
the cinnamon roll cream ale.
Yeah, so it's the cinnamon. So like, who doesn't love a cinnamon roll? And so when we were talking about doing a cinnamon roll beer, I mean, it was kind of like, especially in our meetings, it was like, why are we going to do this? Why do we want to do a cream ale? So, a common question we get asked is, why is the cream ale our base? So think about it like
It's a fantastic base
It's
of a
the
beer.
best base to add anything to.
It
so
really
it's
is.
the most underrated, underappreciated base beer there is. And so
Skittles.
When I added coffee to a cream ale before, I thought, holy shit, that's amazing.
well, wait,
Just
we,
coffee.
we've got one tonight we're going to try with
So-
it. But it's such a good base, and with our chosen one, which are coconut cream ale, it's the same base for it, and it's just such a good clean beer, and so it's easy to add the adjuncts to it.
Well, the other thing, too,
Eric.
is that it's such a drinkable beer that you can do things like this that could very easily, you could also think that a stout would be a good one to do pastry beers out of, but being that they're kind of sugary and heavy flavors, you can easily get into that very hard to drink territory. Southern Tier made a couple of them that were great beers, but the tiramisu. You better split the bottle with 3 or 4 people because a half a pour and you're going to be done with them. Where these, this tastes like a cinnamon roll, but it's still super drinkable.
Man,
like,
that
you could easily
finish.
drink an entire beer of this, no
yeah,
problem, and
easy.
you're not going to feel like it's heavy and sugary and just fatiguing your palate at all.
Just tell me it's not 15%.
No, it's right at 5%. And so kind of like what we were doing, I read this article, and it was talking about that one of the things that we're doing all wrong as craft brewers is we're reaching towards we're sharing the same customers. And so what we're not doing is we're not going out and getting new customers. And so basically it's kind of like teaming up with these other businesses and brewing beers. So like, for example, people I hear all the time up in Sherman, it's like, I don't like beer. Well, why? Well, I don't know. I tried a beer before.
Right.
Well, what was it, right? And so we all know whether it's Coors, Miller, Bud, or whatever. They didn't like it. But do you like cinnamon rolls? Like, I'm telling you, if you drink this beer, you taste a cinnamon roll.
It tastes like a cinnamon roll. Period. It's so dead on.
So
but it's still real drinkable.
My first thought, like smelling it, it's very.
Like he's eating the donuts already.
I was told to by
Yeah,
Chris.
aren't we supposed to eat the donuts?
Yeah.
Too? Yeah.
Yeah, Chris.
So what's
Yeah.
we're gonna blend in some donut pairing here since we have the beers and the
So
donuts.
which one am I supposed to be eating with this beer?
The one with the
Donuts
almond
from-
the one with the pear. One
Donuts
that
from
you're
Hugs
looking
and Donuts in not
for. So it's a white
Houston.
chocolate, yeah, go show 'em.
The one closest to you.
This one. Okay. all right.
Chris, where are Hugs and Donuts from?
Hugs and Donuts
Yeah,
is
this is from Houston, right?
is it
We are
Houston or is it
in the Heights
the
in
Heights?
Houston.
Okay, the Heights.
Yeah. So the original, the very first impression of the aroma is it's very restrained cinnamon, not that in your face,
Yes.
kind of red hot cinnamon flavor. And I take a drink and I get not exactly cinnamon roll cinnamon, but a real pleasant cinnamon. But the finish
It's totally cinnamon
is
roll.
like absolutely cinnamon roll icing, everything to a cinnamon roll. That is spot on. I'm laughing because it's so spot on.
It's
I mean,
dead
just
on, isn't it?
brilliant. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things that like our brewer Wilson, I'm really proud of what he's done, and it's not easy making a beer taste this way, and so
No,
like
it's not at all.
of doing it and adding in the the adjuncts, and we almost brewed 50 beers last year, and so doing
Like
all,
total,
yeah.
just 50 beers.
all these yeah.
You're drinking number 43.
One 5-gallon bag.
I guess I should have said that right. 50
You'll have
different,
to-
50 different
You'll have
beers
to
last year.
excuse us. We're all jackasses.
Oh yeah. Well, you knew that already. I'm sure.
Especially that lot.
I didn't tell him that part when he agreed to come on.
Everyone in here in a hat is a jackass.
So it's like, it's hard to make. Like, the hardest part for us is like, if you name a beer and call it a cinnamon roll cream ale, it better damn sure taste like a cinnamon roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's gonna be some person that's just gonna pick it apart. And so he's done such a great job of making all of our beers taste exactly with like our marketing plan to come up with it. But that's the trend of craft beer is like, give me something new, give me something different than I haven't had. And separate yourself from other breweries, and that's something that we've tried to do at 903, and I feel like these last couple of years we've done a really good job with that.
Yeah, well, as many beers as you're making, I'm just looking at the lineup on your website. I was like, man, that is so much more beer than I remember, even from the core that I would see all the time. Chosen One, the stouts, the versions of the stouts. It's like all of that, I'd see that again and again, but there's a whole lot more there. Like the other day, I was like, man, I just picked up 3 different IPAs from you that I'd never heard of, before. And I was like, oh, great, So it's like, it's that kind of thing. Plus all of these now. I think being versatile is counts for a lot now. And I don't know if you guys are continuing to do. It's like, even if one of these didn't work as well, but it worked well enough to pay for itself, then you made the beer, and if people were happy with it and they want to see it again, they're going to tell you about it, and then it's worth brewing again. Otherwise, fill in that space with something else that might be the next one that is the better one, So
And that donut was out of this world.
That was amazing.
It was fantastic.
So what I need to know is, did I miss one for the blueberry?
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering too.
Yes, there's a blueberry.
Oh,
lemon
okay.
on
All right. Well,
Which one's the blueberry one?
The
Is
purple-
it
the
the
purple
purple one.
Blueberry.
Oh, the one that's blue. Oh yeah. Okay.
It's
Thanks.
going to disappear off the plate pretty darn quick.
That blueberry donut's fantastic.
Is there more blueberry beer?
Yeah, here you go.
Ah, there we
Here
go.
you
go.
We need
yeah.
to take a step back in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, remember your pairing tasting here. If you wanna-
See, so when we talked about this subject and we talked about having these guys on and doing pastry beers, honestly, what came to mind was the Southern Tier that I was talking about before,
yeah.
which brings to my mind heavy and cloyingly sweet. And
Which a lot of the stouts that started the trend
Right.
are.
And I like, not that I don't like those beers. The Southern Tier ones I've always liked, but like I say, you're going to open one bomber, you better have 3 or 4 people to share it with, because you're going to like it, and you're going to like that fourth of a bottle, and you're going to think, okay, now I'm done with this and move on. And these are a totally different animal in that they hit exactly what you're trying to do in terms of flavor, but they're super drinkable. I mean,
I'll tell you,
these don't sit heavy on your palate at all or
Not
anything.
at all.
I think for pastry beers in general, to me, I always go back to the Rogue and their Voodoo Donut series that they're
Right.
pairing with Voodoo Donut. Except I go to the worst one, and it's the very first one I ever had, and it was the bacon maple donut.
Oh God, that was
Yeah, I
awful.
remember that.
And it's a $16, $18 big bottle.
Of awful.
I think it was a finishing gravity of 1060.
It may have been. I mean, I poured. I mean, I bought that, and I got it home, and I pour a glass, and I thought, this is the worst beer I've ever had in my life.
And I love
And
Rogue beer.
Yeah, I love everything they make. I just watched $20 go down the drain because I
Yeah.
took one sip and was like, yeah, I'm not even gonna try the rest of that bottle at all. I had another one of theirs. It was fantastic, but I mean, these are
And that donut with it,
not what I was.
out of this world. Out of this world.
All of it together. I mean, they're perfect combinations.
Diabetes is the correct
diabetes.
coupon
This
code.
is the time.
Diabetes.
I
I
might
think
just hang on to this one.
these are the kind of beers that, with food pairing, people will talk about contrasting flavors or complementing flavors, and either way works.
Yeah.
It's just you have to commit to, I'm going to complement or I'm going to contrast, and I'm thinking we're going to go all the way with complementing flavors on these donuts and the beers, and so far it's been a lot of fun.
Really,
Yeah,
really good.
Complimenting and
Eric, are you thirsty in there?
it's kind of like I
Yes.
think the same
What do
thing
we
with
have now?
pastry beer as well is that they are meant to complement that certain profile of something. Like you said, you had inspiration from a local place making donuts, whatever, or maybe you just had an idea for something that sounded like that's the ticket, right? But when you nail it down and you actually have something that tastes a lot like
Oh my God.
something you would be eating, I always find that amazing in a beer. And that's
I
what
want
I think
more
the
of
thing
these.
about pastry beer is like people complain about it. It's like, no, it's still beer. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. You're delivering exactly what you wanted it to be. And if you like that, then it's right up your alley. If it's not, then like you said, go back to your plain, whatever, boring, style. I mean, that's the
Rice
thing. It's
lager.
like, yeah.
So what's this donut we're eating with the cookies?
Well, this is
It's
cookies
pretty
and cream.
straightforward. It's just an Oreo donut.
Okay,
The one with the
just
the
an Oreo
brown
donut.
one.
Just an
I just
Oreo
have to
donut.
say, like, the joy that I'm getting from drinking these beers is like the joy that I see other people with our donuts that I'm always
Yeah,
tired of.
yeah.
I'm just like, every beer that I've tried is just so delicious.
And we're getting the
You
double
guys
the
are
joy
killing
because
it.
we've got the beer and the donuts.
Chris, you're now expected to bring these donuts every time we see you.
Every damn time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
have to
And
start
Jeremy's the
shipping them up
permanent
here.
guest. Is that what
Does that mean
Like
I
if,
can
if you
write
show
off
up
my-
and the door is locked, you know why. Because you don't have donuts in your hand.
Does this mean I can write off all of my trips back and forth
No.
to Houston now?
No, but you can write off
Talk
the
to
donuts.
Stubby.
Just the car, not the kid. Hey,
Oh, that's
Wow,
funny.
that's an inside Dallas joke
yeah,
there.
there you go. I've got a question for Jeremy, if that's cool.
No.
No, it's not.
No,
I did have a question for Jeremy, but now, do you think, as far as getting the pastriness out of a beer like this, that you actually have to add, like with the blueberry cake donut, you added lots of blueberry cake donuts. do you think you have to add an actual donut or an actual piece of pastry to achieve this?
So I feel like if you call it something, it's got to have it's got to have it in it, right? So like if you brew a porter and you call it a pecan porter, you know you got to have pecans in it, right? And so whenever you have a pastry stout, we put 150 pounds in it. So if you look at it like our grain build, I mean it's probably 5 to maybe 10% of our grain build whenever we brew a large batch on our big system. So how much of that does it really pull through? And we add a lot of stuff on the back end, but it's all a part of when especially like I tell everybody, especially in craft beer, is people want to know how it's made. They want a story. So tell me the story. And one of the things that I feel like I'm pretty good at is I'm good at telling a story. And I don't make anything up. So whenever I tell somebody we put 150 pounds of donuts in when we make this beer, then 300 pounds of puree and vanilla, and we keep adding it till we get that flavor that we're looking for. I mean, that's what people want to hear. So, I would never change that. The cool thing about it is these businesses that we team up with, they see the marketing, the co-marketing side of it. So they hook me up with 150 pounds of donuts or 150 pounds of cake, but we put their name on the can. We give them a shout out. And, so.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for all of us.
I feel like sometimes I've read beer labels and they're putting something in the beer and I just face palm and go, why are you doing this? You're jacking the price of the beer. You're putting something that has absolutely nothing to do with the beer so you can say you put it in there. But then you get to something like this where it's a donut beer. I mean, if you don't put donuts in that beer, I don't care if you don't get anything out of the donut other than saying that it clogged up my mash tun and I spent 2 days lautering.
And your arteries.
You still put donuts in the beer. And then you should be able to call it a donut beer. But that blueberry was...
That's where I was going.
Blueberry was out of this world, wasn't it?
Spectacular.
You can taste the donut in that.
Yeah,
blueberry.
yeah. No, there's donut to that beer.
So
that's
like,
the vanilla.
Can you always achieve that just with malts and creative flavoring, or do you have to have a donut?
I like what you said, the pastriness. That's a good term. It's
the beer I would refer you to. And I was with Greg when he brewed it, and that's as much as I'll claim of it. Is this key lime pie?
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. That was
Don't get me started on that beer.
I will, because it's such a good example of a pastry beer with no pastry in it.
Yeah, because you can. I think that's the thing. It's like it depends on what you're aiming for. But if you're just talking about crust and bread and things like that, specifically, you're looking for something. You can do a lot of things with specialty malt.
Well, did you put any graham in that?
No.
Well, but I agree with what Jeremy is saying. There's something to be said for saying, if I'm going to call this a donut beer, I'm going to put donuts in it.
Right.
Damn it,
You can do it in alternative methods. You can.
It's like the Skittle beer. Okay, I could probably get a beer to taste like Skittles using all the fruit flavors, because you can find all that kind of fruit flavor stuff out there. It's not the same. I put Skittles in beer, and it tastes like Skittles.
Yeah, but and this kind of goes to what we're talking about going to Sherman, and this is part of Texas,
right.
and it's part of the experience of going there, and it's what people look for. They look for a connection to it, and they appreciate the story. They appreciate knowing that you went to the trouble to do that when you didn't necessarily have to do it. The trouble and the expense, of course. There's obviously added expense doing that too, and that. It's not just drinking a beer. It's part of the whole experience of doing it, and part of the connection to the brewery and the people that are in the brewery.
Community.
I'm just not so sure that would taste as much like a.
Well,
no,
and
like
it makes a fun day for us. Like
without it in there.
If there's a cake in the house, like everybody's coming to the cake, and
Yeah,
everybody stands around, and we all break it up and throw it in the mash tun, and
Steal some.
people that provided at the bakery or whoever gets to come out, and it's just a fun day for everybody.
Right.
It makes it so much more of an experience.
So is there cake in this cookies and cream cake?
Yes, there's cookies and cream cake as well as a whole ton of Oreos, like 250 pounds.
Well, there's
It's a shit ton of Oreos.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
4,000 Oreos.
Gosh.
And so somebody asked us one day, this is a joke, right? So they said, how did you add the Oreos into it? And I was like, man, we turned them, we licked them, and we put them in. Like all 4,000.
There you go.
But no, I mean,
it's like a chicha beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to pull you up on something, though. You say you don't make stuff up. why are you on this podcast? We BS all the time.
Now,
Yeah,
there-
it's a missed opportunity,
Yeah,
really.
I
if
mean,
you think
right,
about it.
yeah.
So a couple years ago at Iron Mash, a couple years ago at Blue Bonnet, a homebrewer had a cookies and cream beer, and they found out that I made a Skittles beer, and it's like, all right, you got to over and try this beer I made. So I try it, and I'm like, all right, where'd you get the what's your recipe? He's like, I don't know, because it was a mistake. He butchered a batch of beer.
And it
realized,
just happened to come out that way.
realized that he could augment it a little bit, and it tasted like Bluebell cookies and cream ice cream. It was
And he'll never be able
ridiculous.
to make
Yeah,
another
he can
batch
never
of
do
it,
it
yeah.
again.
Never done.
So to purposely do things like this, it's one, it's fun because I love doing that. But two, there's something to be said that you can do this and you can repeat it.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting about it is we'll have a set release date, and that we'll get close to that date, and we'll try it, and we'll be like, it's not quite there. Like, it's almost there. And so we'll tweak it a little bit, and we'll be like, oh, man, it's so close. But if it says cookies and cream, it's got to taste like cookies and cream.
Right.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot more time than we plan tweaking it and getting it just right where it needs to be. And it is
Typically,
hard.
how
big
many
are your-
batches does it
Yeah,
take
how
you
big
to
are your
come up with
pilot
something like
batches
this?
for these?
I mean, we brew 30 barrels. There's no 5-gallon or
No,
barrel
there's
and a
no
half.
starter to
No,
this. It's
we,
straight in.
we do 30 barrels.
But you get it dialed in after what? A couple of batches? A few batches?
Well, so all these that you had, this is just our first batch of doing these.
Get out.
No, it really is. It really yeah. It's our first batch of. You know, it takes a while, and so like
You say
know,
the brewer's name is Wilson?
mhm.
Hat off to Wilson, I
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah, if he's nailing it down
Yeah.
that fast.
Do you only
cookies
ever
and-
see the top of his head looking
Yeah.
over for a minute?
Or does he look like a volleyball? Which one of the
he gets that a lot. That's always like our joke about it. But I mean, the thing about these beers. So like we'll can 100 cases. We're a brew pub, and we like a story about that is we started out as a brewery. And, we realized we got tired of telling people, the law's starting to change where breweries can actually sell beer to go out of the brewery. And we got tired of telling people, no, we can't. We can't fill your growler. We can't sell you bottles or cans or kegs to go. So we actually wanted to convert to a brew pub. Only one little problem. It was illegal in our little town of Sherman to have a brew pub. So we had to go out, run an election. We had to get 2,700 signatures. So that sounds really easy, right?
That's all of Sherman, right?
So Sherman's 40,000 people. Okay, it's quite a bit.
That's a big town.
That includes the cows and the chickens. But what was crazy is how many people you had to be a registered voter. So how many people weren't registered to vote? We were just getting signatures. I mean, people were getting hammered at the brewery, and we're getting signatures, and then we're like, oh, dude, you're not even registered to vote. It doesn't count. And so basically, we ran an election, and I grew up in a Baptist church, and so it's a Baptist community. So it wasn't easy convincing that it's not just about a brew pub. It makes Sherman completely wet, which means there's liquor stores on the corner, right? And so we had to run an election and say, hey, look, we need this for 903 brewers to continue to grow and thrive. We've got to sell beer to go out of our tap room. And
Did that make Sherman wet?
it did. Yeah.
Whoa.
Sorry, I couldn't pass that one up.
Wow.
I was waiting for somebody to jump in and say that, right?
It was always going to be him.
Yeah,
Nigel, I thought you were going to go there.
No,
but-
no, I've got more decorum than that.
He's more about anger.
All right.
He
But-
goes straight for the mom.
But we won by 73% and
Nice.
converted to a brew pub. And
That's no small accomplishment.
no,
No.
it's not. And
Elections never.
and it convincing a community because before we opened our doors in 2013, Sherman had only been we could only sell beer and wine for about 5 years before we opened our doors. So for all that time, you can buy beer or wine in Sherman. So for us both being from there, we spend a lot of time in it. But for us to be able to do that, we can 100 cases. We keg about 20 half barrels and 40 different slims, and those go out throughout counts through all North Texas in the tap room. And then we just sell them the cans there. So people have to come up and buy them. Our profit margins aren't really great because of how much time they tie up our tanks or how much time that we tweak it to get it just right. Because I'm not going to release a beer that I'm not feeling that's there. Neither is Wilson. And as you tasted all these beers, they tasted like they should. And so like on the cookies and cream, the thing about it is, I've eaten a lot of Oreos in my days.
No.
If you didn't know that by looking at me. But the thing about an Oreo is it almost has this fake chocolate taste to it, right?
Yeah.
You eat an Oreo, it's not like
Incredibly rich.
any other. So whenever we tell everybody, hey, this is the cookies and cream, we don't call it an Oreo, cookies and cream ale, it tastes like just kind of that back end of a Bluebell's cookies and cream ice cream, or a Dairy Queen cookies and cream Blizzard, but it's not overpowering. So you taste the beer, and then it just kind of nicely on the back of your palate, you get the cookies and cream, and it's my favorite by far, hands down, of all the Pastryarchy beers.
Yours is the second beer that I've had that's actually had Oreo additions to it, and I literally a week ago I had the I think Prairie's Double Dunk or whatever Oreo. And I thought, how the hell is this supposed to taste like Oreo? How did they manage to actually catch any Oreo in this? And it's a stout. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot going in front of the Oreo flavor. But this lays bare the Oreo. It's there immediately.
And that's what I
Whereas,
really
like
like
with the
about the
stout,
cream ale base. Yeah.
It was well after, all in the finish. Oh, wait, there it is. There's some. Otherwise, it was just a stout. I got it for my wife thinking, oh, it's Oreo. It's one of your favorite things. Let's try this. And she's like, it's a little too much, it's too strong, it's too this, which a lot of imperial stouts at 11%, it's going to be that way, right? This, she would love this. It's be right there on top of it. So it's like, hey.
Well, yeah, there's something to be said for it's a beer with the flavor.
Right.
And the cream ale is so drinkable and takes such a back seat to the flavors. It still has a beer, that's a weird kind of phrase to use, but it has a beer taste to it.
Yeah.
But then you have this really bright, upfront pastry flavor to it that's not super heavy and cloying and sweet because it's having to overpower roast
Right.
and coffee and all
chocolate
that stuff.
malt.
Yeah, and chocolate. Yeah.
Malt specifically is
right.
the killer.
So,
all right. So, which donut are we drinking with or eating with this one?
I'm not going to drink this beer. I'm just going to sit here and smell it.
Yeah, it smells.
The red velvet with the mocha.
Yeah.
The red velvet. Okay. Actually, this is really similar to one I just judged for Bluebonnet before we started here.
Oh yeah, I heard you talking about
a coffee cream ale that was really out of this world.
Are you doing?
This is what I like about a cream ale. This is when I realized I like cream
Bluebonnet
ales.
Are you doing cold press? Are you doing beans? And where are you doing?
So what we do, so the next up is the mocha vanilla cream ale. And so kind of what I was wanting to do is I was wanting to reach a different audience. I was thinking of mainly women who maybe not or don't want to drink beer. I was trying to make a beer taste like a mocha vanilla latte. So there's a local coffee shop that roasts their own coffee beans called CJ's Coffee in Sherman. So we reached out to them, teamed up with them, and they roasted some of their espresso beans. And so it's cream ale based, so the base is the same to all the beers. And then basically what we do is we cold press the beans with the beer. So for about 72 hours, we're recirculating the beer, so that all the beer touches the espresso beans.
Oh, okay.
And,
we're
tasting it throughout because we don't want it to be overpowering, but we want it to be there. So, whenever you guys first smell it, I mean, you could smell it, right?
Right.
So I wanted a beer that I could come into the brewery in the morning and I could be like, well, I'm drinking my coffee, but really I'm drinking beer, right? And so it's the perfect morning beer, and it's a cream ale. So a funny story on this was there was an account. We dropped off a can, and the general manager wasn't there, and he was looking for a new beer to put on tap. And we said, here, tell him to drink this, holler at us. So he calls us, and he says, I want 2 half barrels. This beer is amazing. So our distributor, Full Clip, sends him 2 half barrels. He puts it on. He calls us, and he's like, hey, they sent me the wrong keg. On the collar, it says mocha vanilla, but this beer is just, something's wrong. So we go over there, and we pour it, and he goes, look, it's clear. I guess the guy didn't pour it into a, he just opened the can and drank it, right?
Drank it.
So the beer really throws you off because most of the time when you think of coffee beers, you think of stouts or porters,
Exactly.
right?
Uh-huh.
So we want to do this in the cream ale to get people in to say, hey, look, I'm not intimidated by the color. Let me try it and go, oh my gosh, I love this beer. And I feel like, we absolutely, same thing as all of them. If you look at the description of it, we nailed it with this one.
You absolutely did.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a lot. About 2 years ago, my wife turned around and said to me, I want a beer. She doesn't like beer. I want you to make me a beer, and I want it to be vanilla, and I want it to be chocolate, and I want it to be raspberry. But I also want it to be high in alcohol, but
Not beery.
not beery,
And not dark.
and not dark. So
I like the not beery part.
right, yeah. So I went to Greg and said, "What the hell are we going to do here?" So we came up with a golden stout, and I must admit we let it lapse. I made an attempt at it, then we made a joint attempt at it.
Got pretty close
and it
in
was
our first try.
It turned out to be a golden coffee beer, right?
Yeah.
A golden coffee stout, which was great. It was a great beer. It's not what she wanted, and we haven't really progressed down that road since. But this reminds me. I mean, albeit a cream ale, not a stout, but I mean it's a similar sort of principle, right?
Right.
The color denies the flavor and the taste,
Which a lot of the
and
golden
expectations.
Yeah. The cream ale is just an amazing base.
Yeah,
I
it
mean, we have a list here in the back of this talking just about pastry beers in general. Like later on, what we need to try to think of is maybe do a collaboration recipe of some
That'd
kind.
be
Like
awesome.
let's figure something out that'd be interesting to do. But I put a bunch of stuff in here from just a series of BYO or Brew Your Own magazine articles that had beers with recipes that really sort of fit within the definition of what pastry beers are. And surprisingly, even the ones that came from the real specific pastry beer, like articles, most of them are cream ales and blonde ales, more so than stouts. And if they're not even that, it's a porter. And a porter's still a hell of a lot lighter than an imperial stout is on any time of the day for adding anything to. And I think that that's a good comparison there. Say you have a cream ale, which on its own, I mean, I get why people like it, especially if they're coming off of Bud Light and whatnot, you know. But man, you can add almost anything to
It's
that
a blank
beer,
canvas.
and it's an amazing supportive structure for it. And that's like every beer you've given us that's been a cream ale base is amazingly supportive to that. At first time I added coffee to it, I put an ounce to say a pint of cold pressed coffee in. I was like, this is one of the fucking best things I've ever made. This is amazing. Everyone that liked it, everyone tried it, liked it.
Dropping F-bombs.
Coconut, fantastic.
That's how good it is.
We hit that F-bomb portion of the
Yeah.
show.
All of it.
huh?
It's
Yeah.
everything that I've. And here's another one
We've
too.
gone PG
If
13.
you talk about Jones, I've never seen that man so excited about a beer until we went to NHC in San
Cali
Diego,
Creamin'.
and he had the Cali Creamin', which is just a cream ale with vanilla in it, and they just nailed that vanilla character for that specific beer. And that dude, I think he would walk to California to get a case of it and walk back. That's how much he liked it, you know. So it's just like one of those things. It's like it works so well, and it's a cream ale, and you never think that.
For some reason, cream ale gets a bad name.
Well,
too.
you know why? Genesee.
Yeah,
Genesee.
And
Yeah.
you know
Genesee.
the typical examples of it out there, the Little Kings and stuff like that. It's crap. I mean, it's you know, I've enjoyed some cream ales while I'm sitting eating fried clams or something like that with the food it's going along with. But the commercial examples that kind of brought that style along are not very good beers. Homebrewers and craft brewers have taken cream ale, I think, and made it a
Yes.
really great,
Yeah.
Yes.
a really great style of beer. I love homebrew cream ale, and what y'all are doing with this is fantastic.
right.
You know, which is this is a lot more like a homebrew cream ale than the typical commercial examples that have been around forever, which to me are just kind of lifeless. You know, they're ale versions of American
Light lagers.
light lagers. Yeah.
Whereas
And
this, you can barely make a modification and have a huge difference in the beer in the end.
this has a good, solid base beer to it that has character, it has flavor, but it's light and easy to drink and a good palate to put other things on top of. And that's what I think homebrewers and craft brewers have done with cream ale to improve it. Still within the framework of being a cream ale, but just a better
Absolutely.
beer than what's been around before.
So it's neat to be to see how much like free advertising we've got from this beer. So the God Live wrote a big story about it. Dallas Morning News, which is the parent company of God Live, shared it. NBC DFW shared it, and so I read all the comments, and so people that don't follow us or don't follow craft beer was like, pastry beers. They make beers with donuts and cakes. Like, what happened to the days of brewing real beer?
Right.
Well,
Get past the gimmick.
Right.
Did it get fermented with yeast
Yeah.
and carbonated? Oh, it's still beer.
I feel like any of those people are probably ones that haven't tasted it, because I think that these
Or
are beers
much-
that you could go into any one of these beers that you gave us tonight with a negative attitude towards it, and then drink it, and immediately your mind would be changed.
These are the people that say real beer, and then they turn around and get a light lager out of the fridge, and that's their real beer. So
But see, I think this would appeal to even them, because it's not heavy and sweet and
Yeah, they just have to
cloying,
taste
and
it.
it's got a lot of character and a lot of flavor to it, but it's really easily drinkable.
I don't think there's many people more traditional when it comes to beer and drinking beer than me, especially with my English beers and stuff like that.
he's not lying.
No. But
He learned everything from Mikey.
yeah,
He's
well,
experimental.
some of it I brought from my
Mikey's
my
protege.
dad and my genes, you know. But
You got stuff out of your dad's jeans?
yes, and I'm going to
We're
kick you in the
devolving.
balls in a minute. What I'm trying to say is, since homebrewing, I've learned to appreciate the bigger window and the bigger craft that there is to making beer, and this sort of thing is just extending that out even further. I tell you, you guys and Wilson are knocking this out of the park. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. You know, and this is just a little bit about what we do. You know, kind of like to toot our own horn is, you know, because when we first opened our doors, you know, we did put some beer out that wasn't very good, and you know what. I mean, like, we've all brewed beer that hasn't been great, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, in 2015,
Especially Mikey.
That's true. It's true.
you know, Sasquatch won silver medal at the Great American Beer Festival in the aged category. And then, you know, that competition, I don't know if you've ever gone and sit in there, but, you know, it's gone from this little room from 6 years ago when we sat in there to, you know, now it's 15,000 brewers are sitting
Auditorium.
in there. Yeah. And, you know, this year our Kilt Switch, which is our wee heavy Scotch ale, you know, took home a bronze medal.
Yes.
And
Good stuff.
Congrats.
thank you. And, you know, and so we, you know, the thing about it is, like, we push the envelope on what, you know, the category of beer is, right? You know, to brew these pastry beers, but we also brew, you know, really good, true to style beer with Sasquatch, our porter, you know, our Kilt Switch, which is a wee heavy, 12.9%.
That's a very heavy wee.
It's good.
But, you know, like, you know,
It's less
lot
than
heavy.
wee.
I talk
Not too
about
much into that.
how
Is there
much
any peat malt in there?
yeah, there is. And I wish I'd have brought more.
Oh, I'm gonna start some shit.
Oh.
But, you know, it's you know, Iron Thistle, you know, I talk about Rahr and Fritz, you know, my love for Rahr and Sons. You know, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't even be here today, as far as, you know, in craft beer. And, you know, that beer, you know, Iron Thistle is what inspired me to brew a beer that way. And to walk across that stage in Denver in that category is special to me. And, you know, I give Fritz and, you know, those guys there, and, you know, especially Austin Jones, you know, just I give them all the credit for inspiring me to want to open up, you know, 903 Brewers. And, you know, my whole thing is I hope I inspire other people to, you know, open up their brewery one day, or to get into homebrewing and brewing beer. You know, when I give a tour, people always ask me, you know, what beer are you brewing at home? I'm like, shit, what is home? You know, I'm always working at the brewery, and I miss those days of brewing that 5-gallon batch, whether it's in my kitchen or garage with my buddies. But, you know, there's just something special about the beer that I've shared with you today is pushing the envelope, which, you know, 6 years ago, nobody would have put pastries in beer. No one would have thought it would have been good. But then, like you guys, you know, you tried it tonight, you're like, damn, this actually works.
Well, and also what you're talking about, people that aren't beer drinkers and wouldn't think that they would like this at all, and bringing people in that just aren't even in the beer circle at
Right.
all, and getting them to like something that they just didn't think that they would would like at all. I think that's really cool too.
Especially if you're talking about your community. If you're getting people from your community that maybe aren't that experimental, and they're coming in and trying the beers and liking them, and then getting their friends to come try the beers and they like them, that's huge. I mean, for beers like this especially, because people don't experiment that much if they say, I don't like, you know, I like it just standard, middle of the road, whatever. If you're getting someone to try something that's very much outside their usual comfort zone, that opens a whole new world to them every time. It's like for a lot of homebrewers or craft beer drinkers in general, hey, I've never had a Belgian beer before. And then next thing you know, they're willing to try every beer that you give them because they had that one beer, So
Yeah. So I'm having a very hard time not eating these 2 donuts that are on my plate. Are there other beers that go with these donuts? Because I'm going to eat these. So if there are...
Well, I think we already drank one of the beers that goes
we drank
with
the
them.
cherry
We drank the
chocolate,
cherry
yeah.
chocolate. already.
Okay.
Oh, this is almost a whole can. You can pass
Oh, there
it
we
back
go.
around.
There we go. We don't need a lot of that one. It's,
oh, I need a whole glass of that one, please.
Greg wants
So-
a whole
so this is the first one we
cup.
started with tonight, just kind of before we even talked about it at all. And this one is by far my favorite of the night. I was really blown away by how
Shots
good this
fired
was.
to the cream house.
So what we did is we wanted to create a a reserve series. So I love whiskey.
So
I love
which donut does this go with?
Someone that's kind of cherry
Anything
looking.
you want, Brandon.
The cherry chocolate,
I guess.
brand.
I don't see one that looks cherry looking.
There's a reddish one.
It's got a cherry icing.
I'm not good with colors.
With a chocolate milk crumble.
Hey,
so it
that
doesn't
one.
Okay,
really
thank
look
you.
super bright.
So
Oh, they're good together.
we wanted to create this reserve series, which is just kind of like our high-end beer. So if you think of a high-end whiskey, high-end scotch, so we want to create it with beer. And so all of these beers are going to be above 13%. So the double chocolate cherry, we actually added 37 pounds of cherry puree per barrel of beer.
Wow.
And we doubled the amount of chocolate. So look how cloudy that is, almost brown, right? Where's the camera? There we go, right there. So there's so much chocolate in this beer. And it's 15%. So the amount of chocolate and the amount of cherry that we add into this beer really hides the alcohol. We oak age
It really does. There's no way I would have guessed it was 15%.
till you stand up. Then you're like, okay.
Well, that's every podcast, unfortunately.
So it's oak age. We actually add oak spirals into our fermentation tank, and it gives it that oak, that flavor, just kind of like, man, it's just, I say this word a lot, but it really is. It's like nicely just on the back end, like it finishes.
Right.
You get
Yeah.
it because you get the chocolate. Like when I
It
talk,
rounds it out.
yeah. I talk about in all my videos when I do the description of the beer, that chocolate just comes out swinging, then the cherry comes in, and then just kind of on the back end, your palate just starts drying out just nicely, and that's where you just get the oak spirals.
Right. Nice soft finish.
Yeah.
With the oak, yeah. Because that cherry comes through real strong in the middle. That's where it's like that first sip. I was like, okay, yeah, and then, oh wait, there it is. Like it's definitely coming in, and it's definitely a natural cherry flavor too, which is nice. So compared to say, if you're doing extract cherry flavoring, it just doesn't work. It's weird.
Yeah,
but that's nice. I like that. So.
Almost, we've done that before.
And there's a good hue to it as well from the cherry. So.
And it's not a cheap beer to make. And obviously, if you put some reserve on anything, like it's got to be good. And we gave Martin House the shout out. Like our accounts no longer want bombers. Bombers are dying. Nobody wants to buy a bomber.
Right.
So we did the 2 cans in a box. And what's amazing about that is you can crack one 12-ounce can open, share it with some buddies, save the other 12-ounce can. You can either trade it or share it, or
I
just
absolutely
age it.
love that format.
yeah.
The first time I bought one of those, I didn't even know it was, and I opened it up and I thought, there's just 2 cans in here, and I thought, I really like this. I can drink half of it if I want. If I don't have someone to share it with, I can just drink one of them and still have another one. That's a great format. I love it.
And you get 2 more ounces of beer. Like who doesn't want 2 more ounces, right?
Yeah,
So from
yeah.
22-ounce bomber
Yeah.
to 2 12-ounce cans, and
9% extra.
the you're gonna see. I mean,
Beer math.
there-
Put that on the box.
yeah. You're welcome. You're gonna see a lot more breweries doing that. We've heard from other breweries that said, hey, they're thinking about doing it, and I was like, do it, because like our accounts, like I said, no longer want bombers. They just sit on the shelf.
Yep.
But that packaging and 2 cans in a box, I mean, it's brilliant. Martin House was the one who kind of started the push with it.
It's one of those simple genius ideas. Like, duh, why haven't we been
Yeah, I
doing
wish
this
I'd
all
have thought
along?
of
This
that,
makes
right.
so much more sense. And I don't even know if other markets even know what we're talking about. I mean, here, what we get, Martin House started doing this, and it's
been a while.
a tall box, so it looks like there's a
bomber in
a
it.
Looks like
bomber
there'd be a big
inside it,
bottle
but
in
you
it,
open it
yeah.
up and it's just 2 12-ounce cans. And I like it so much better. I think it's great.
And it's got great artwork.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it gives you a
I
palette.
save the boxes and put them on my wall. Honestly,
Boxing.
in
Yeah.
my beer room. I
It
do.
gives you a palette to work
You know,
from.
I think
So-
about
I like the artwork.
some of
About
the,
two
the
boxes
beers
of
of the
beer.
past that I've had that were in 22-ounce bombers, and I buy it as a single person and take it home, and you pour that first pint and realize that you still have the rest of the bottle to go, but it's so rich in flavor, or it's so high in alcohol, or whatever it is, and you look at that rest of the bottle and you go, there's no way I can
You're
finish
gonna
this, but
waste
there's
it,
no
right?
way I'm not going to finish it.
Definitely gotten really trashed doing that several
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Like
But that's
old
where us Europeans have got it right. Half liter.
Yes, I agree.
Half liter
I
bottles.
like that half
Yeah,
liter size. Yeah.
And they're not 9%.
the old Red Hook double black stout with
the double black stout. Yeah,
with,
that was a
with
great beer.
Starbucks, and you'd be hammered and wide awake. Brilliant combination.
That may be one of the first bombers I think I ever
Yeah.
bought was that double black
Yeah.
stout. Man, that's going way back. That's the 90s.
Yeah.
I'm not old. You're old.
Good
I'm not
times.
old. You're old.
I'm not old. You're old.
So, you guys do more than pastries. You made, like as we discussed earlier, you made 1 5-gallon batch last year. So in the other 45 beers, what have you made? What do you continue to make? What's part of your core?
So we
eat this
Sasquatch
donut.
is the beer that put us on the map, right? It was the first beer that we won at the Great American Beer Festival. So we do several different
What's
variants.
Sasquatch?
It's an imperial chocolate milk stout.
Yeah.
So it's 10.3%. It's this beer that for us to brew a beer that was 10%, we thought we could never brew a beer bigger than that, right? And it doesn't taste like 10%. And so, we do a lot of different variants of Sasquatch. Kind of our barrel program, being part of a brew pub, is, we don't have to take, 20 whiskey barrels and release them all as just a whiskey barrel aged Sasquatch. We do a lot of variants of it. And, we poured earlier our Ogre, which is our Imperial Oatmeal Stout.
Right.
We have another Imperial Oatmeal Stout with the same yeast that we do for Kilt Switch. It's the same base beer as the Ogre, just different yeast. And then we add Vietnamese coffee to it. And so, we brew a bunch of different IPAs, even though we're not known for IPAs. So, throughout the year, we're just constantly we get tired of drinking the same beer, so we want to brew something.
You want to evolve
Yeah.
into something different. Cool.
Something different. And so, this year we're like, in 2019, we're not going to brew as many beers as we did 2018.
Right.
But, we
Just 1 4-gallon batch.
yeah, just one
Right.
4-gallon batch. But, we come to it and we're like, we've got to beat last year and we've got to push the envelope of what we're doing. And so far, what we've been doing is working, and let's just continue to do it. But the consumer is like, hey, let's excite me.
They want the boundaries pushing, right?
Yeah. And so, I look at them as like, I have a 3-year-old son. So the joke or the magic trick that I showed him a week ago is no longer cool.
Right.
So, these beers that you drank today, they're cool to you guys because it's the first time you've had them. But, you're like, okay, what else you got?
And that's the beer market today. Yeah,
That's right.
And I think that's one of the reasons these large format beers are going away is it's kind of, you have to, as a brewery, you have to invest in putting those out, and things change so quickly now, and you've got to have, what's the next new thing that you're doing? That's what it is. The core beers are not what's propping breweries up these days. It's what's the next new thing that keeps
Core
your
beers
name
are even
relevant.
going away. There are
Yeah.
breweries.
A
that
lot of them are.
They're losing.
Which
core
kills
beers.
me. I don't, I still like the good old 6-pack beers that a brewery puts out,
Yeah.
the good solid basic styles, but that's
So a perfect example, we had a beer called the Land of Milk and Honey, and it was a golden
that.
Yeah.
milk stout. It was the beer that paid for our expansion from a 7-barrel to a 30-barrel, and we killed that at the end of 2018. Right, like it was selling, but it was tying up our tank because there was other beers. So the thing that like breweries have to do is you have to adapt to the times. So,
Yeah.
like core beers, they're good, right? But are they paying your bills? Are they tying up tank space? Are they allowing you not to be creative? And you have to do it. So one of the things that we're really good at 903 Brewers is, we're not set in our ways. So, for example, there may be a beer that we like, but we're not afraid to say, unfortunately, we can't brew that beer anymore because we've got to come out with something new. Where, you see a lot of these breweries that are having to close their doors. It's because they're not willing to adapt. You know, like they would say, I'm never going to put, pastries in a beer. Hey, man, if you've got to do that and your customer likes it and they're willing to pay you for it and it's going to help you make payroll this next week.
And if you're
You
going to
do
do a
it.
good job
Yeah.
of it, you know,
If it's
that's
gonna
the
be
thing.
like this, then
Yeah.
Well, and in some cases, you can use that ridiculous beer that the consumers want, so you can go ahead and continue, even maybe in a smaller batches, make that one that you might have a sentimental attachment to, so that okay, maybe it doesn't sell as well as it does, but it still does move. But this one over here pays for it.
So I have one more donut on my plate here. Is this just a free range donut? Am I?
I think it's going
What's
to
this
go with
last
the
one?
future.
I
Sorry.
really
Future
Um,
903 beer.
It was supposed to go with the ogre. It's a Thai tea donut.
Oh, so
Oh,
we
okay.
drank.
Does it go
I drank
well?
something else with the ogre.
Does it go
didn't
well with
There's-
old ale on
There's
Brett?
ogre
ogre?
right there.
The ogre's
Where's
right
the
there.
ogre?
Oh yeah, that's him. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That we got into it too early. That's all it was.
Hey.
Sons of bitches.
Maybe it goes
Sorry
well
about
with
that.
an old ale on Brett.
You know what? I feel like that's a pretty
Maybe.
good success rate. If we ended up with one that we drank too early,
One
that's
free range
pretty
donut
good.
Brandon, try it with that one.
With which one?
That one in that.
with your mom.
Oh, this old ale.
Yeah.
This is
Brett.
with the old ale yeast,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
I had this before and I really liked it.
The cherry was.
Cherry was 15%. I think
What was the percent on the ogre?
15%.
A million.
Oh, it was also 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of percent.
So do you have?
That's probably why I had to
do you-
re-ask.
Do you have any more in the patriarchy line, kind of queued up that you're willing to share with the listeners? That
So the very first pastry beer we didn't get to bring today because it's all gone, was strawberry cake.
no.
So we've actually rebrewed it, and we'll be launching it again in about 3 or 4 weeks, I think. 3 weeks. And so it's a cream ale, and it's made with strawberry cake, and then we add strawberry puree as well.
Road trip.
And it's phenomenal. Like, the reason we're brewing it again is because everybody just raved about it.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing is there's a lot of people who can't come all the way up to the brewery that with draft going out. So, all a part of was, canning 100 cases was not because, we couldn't can more. We could because, we have much larger tanks. We have the capacity to do it. It was like, can we make this work? Let's build a hype. And so the strawberry cake cream ale is actually going to go distribution all throughout North Texas in cans and kegs as well. But so here's our next plan, right? So in 2 weeks, we're brewing the cinnamon roll cream ale again. But if you know me, I'm a stout guy. Like, I'm a big dude. I love big beers. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to brew the cinnamon roll cream ale, and then we're going to brew the cinnamon roll donut stout. I'm going to make it a 7% stout, so it's not going to be the Sasquatch. It's not going to be 10%. I call 7% a session stout, right?
Right.
So, so what we're going to do is we're going to drop a cream ale, and 2 weeks later we'll drop the stout version, and then the next one will be the blueberry cream ale, then the blueberry stout, and then the mocha vanilla cream
that's
ale,
cool.
the mocha vanilla stout. So basically what we want to do is not just reach all drinkers, whether you like light beers or dark beers. What we want to do is we want to, because same thing with me, right? Like I used to like light lagers. Then I worked my way up into, wheat beers. And then, I had, Iron Thistle. And now, I own a brewery. So, what we want to do is we want to do the same thing with our customers is like, look, if you really like this cream ale, now try the stout version. So we want to kind of work their way up into other beers in our portfolio and make them fall in love with it. And so that's kind of our plan that we're going to be doing with this. And, we feel like what we've done and what you guys tried today that we can really make that work.
Well,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, there's certain shows that we do where I feel like no matter what we do and how much we talk about it, it's impossible to really get the people listening to understand
justice.
how fantastic what we just had was. Yeah. And between the donuts that y'all brought in and then the beers, that was really out of this world. I mean, I can't even say how much I enjoyed both the beers and the donuts. So thank you to you guys for bringing this in
Hugs
and
and
talking to us
donuts.
about this. And thank you to Kirsten and Chris for bringing in, mostly Kirsten. Really, Chris didn't really
Chris-
do
nothing.
anything at
Chris,
all.
you
Just
let
to be
us
clear,
down.
he
You
did
didn't.
nothing.
He's just eye candy,
You didn't
really, if
send
you
a
think about it.
text.
Yeah. But
I wouldn't say eye candy.
I'm trying to throw you a bone.
Nigel
dude. I
would.
mean, No, but
I did.
I just really enjoyed all this part of the show. It was really fantastic. So thank you all for
Is
going to the effort
903
to bring all
outside of
this in.
Texas right now?
Yes, we are in most of Oklahoma now,
Right.
and hopefully in the next month or so, parts of Kansas.
All right. So
Kansas.
Yeah.
when breweries here start to get out of state, you can see their beers show up in a lot more places, a lot more often, just because more people are traveling through those other states too, that they're not getting to Texas. So keep an eye out for those beers. Look for them. They're worth trying.
Yeah,
because they'll hold up.
So the question we get asked is like, why are you going into Oklahoma and Kansas? So like, it's closer. It's the same distance to Kansas it is to Houston, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like how far apart we are. But the cool thing about is whenever we reach our, expand our, in other markets, it just keeps our beer fresh. Versus if you brew a lot of beer and you're only in one market, you've got to wait for those shelves to empty before you can put, more beer. And so, like, our goal is to make sure that all of our customers have the freshest beer possible. Now, the thing that we did learn, and if you're starting a brewery, you're listening, is the further you get outside of your market, the less your beer sells because there's other local breweries in those areas, right?
Yeah.
So what we're just trying to do is create exciting beers in those markets. But Oklahoma City, Tulsa, have been really good markets for us.
Oklahoma is a really good beer market.
Yeah,
actually.
it
They've
is.
got some great stuff going on up there, and there's some good
Tulsa's a
qualified
great
beer
market.
drinkers.
Yeah.
Plus-
Tulsa's a fun market too.
Kansas and Oklahoma are both two states that I traveled through and found a lot of beer from other places that weren't from Kansas or Oklahoma that I was happy to find and try for the first time, So that's something I think makes a big, especially Kansas. A lot of people come through Kansas. One place to the next, they're coming through, and
Mafia.
It's a pass-through state.
it is. And that's the thing. But they're stopping in places and picking up beers, and it's like, hey, then they know what they're looking for from that point forward. They might see something on the shelf they've never seen before, and then they've taken it home. So
I think it's actually a 0% grade from your place to Kansas City. I think you could actually go outside and roll a beer can down the street, and it would roll through Oklahoma and into Kansas if you did
Might
it hard
be,
enough.
yeah.
So yeah,
Maybe a next show idea right there.
that's not a really viable beer distribution plan, but
take a whole bunch of beer and just start rolling it.
right. Just
All right,
roll it
guys,
there. Yeah.
just run and push.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming
was
in and
awesome.
bringing us
Yeah.
these beers. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When we were talking about pastry beers, I thought, okay, cool, this will be good. I've liked some of the Southern Tier stuff I've had and that kind of thing, but I had no idea it was going to be this good. This was a whole new level, I think, of
We're full of
beers.
surprises.
Yeah.
What
are you
talk about
pointing at
making a
here?
recipe? Before we go?
Right now,
I don't know.
right meow.
Right
Meow.
meow.
I don't know if we got the time right
Meow.
now.
We can put a basis together, maybe.
Yeah.
Cream ale.
Well,
There's the-
Well,
the
we talked
basis.
about that. I think. What's something that you guys haven't approached yet? We're trying to think of something on a homebrew scale. If somebody's trying to do something interesting, that would be good. Obviously, we've hit up cream ale. We know how well that works, and we know that stout works well enough depending on what you're looking for. But anything outside of that we'd want to branch out and try something different than.
Gotta say, you're catching me a little off guard on this one. I wasn't prepared for
Well, I've
it.
got a lot of
I
recipes.
think light lager.
I judged 6 beers
Well,
before
Greg,
I started
may-
the show. so
Got a lot of
see, there's
recipes in the back.
6
as
labels
examples.
that are missing here.
maybe
so.
we take our golden stout idea and put it onto a cream ale and do a white chocolate raspberry cream ale or something.
Banana, Foster.
no.
call it a Swedish golden shower.
No.
No, okay.
No,
Scrap
see-
that
I
all
think
out.
that's a great idea.
See, you and Mikey just ruined it. Just destroyed it.
I didn't have to try real hard.
Hang on, where's my shoe?
Never.
Where's my shoe?
I hope it's on your foot.
Well, it's either that or across the room because I've thrown it at somebody.
Well, like
Remember, we got compliments about that. Or complaints, I forget.
I think there's a lot of. I think in the pastry range, there's still a lot that you could go outside. We did a lot of things here that are sort of donut-ish in a lot of ways. Like I included some recipes here, like glazing saddles, which was a blonde ale that they used donuts, and but they only barely used any donuts, and they really pushed it with specialty malt.
Half
And
of
vanilla.
one glazed donut
Yeah.
is on the.
Yeah, and vanilla and cinnamon sticks, which again, depending on what you're starting with, like a blonde or a cream ale, those vanilla and cinnamon sticks go a long way. Funnel cake, that one lactose is a big player, and I've noticed lactose is a big player in a lot of pastry beers.
Yeah,
I mean,
can see that.
you have to work that, and that's like the same thing with the key lime pie one that we did. You have to use lactose, or it's just not going to have the character that you want it to have. But we also used what was the original the Swan
Swan
Honey biscuit?
honey biscuit,
honey
yeah.
biscuit, which was great
Yeah.
for that graham cracker sort of crust taste. But you can modify some other malts and put things together for that, like we did biscuit and honey malt
Yeah.
to try to work out the same character when we ran out of Swan to use. So specialty malts, Vienna, bready, nice, a little bit of
Munich.
Munich. I think
You
Munich
can
may be a bit strong,
also
but
use
you need
Munich
to,
if you can't get your hands on Munich.
you would
can
need
use
to
Munich.
apply some levels to that. If you weren't doing something that was like, to me, there are things like Black Forest cake, and they're using a lot of these have English ale yeast because they're pushing the fruity esters. But sweet cherry puree, a lot of that liquid cacao blend that's out there right now, that's a really popular
I
thing.
haven't seen that before. I've see that in a couple of these.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar
Death by
with that.
Coconut. That's one that Sandra was here one time. She talked about that, and that's one that they use coconut and they use a lot of that liquid cacao.
Chilaka.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a specific brand that's a really easy to use one. But I mean, even when you're using those, I still say things like pale chocolate and whatnot. That if you want to push chocolate and get the right thing out there, you're gonna have to also use some lactose and things to kind of get like that chocolate cream pie taste, if that's what you're looking for. You know?
One of the things I think it's a common belief on brewing a pastry type beer or something like this that I think most people you would talk to that were writing one of these recipes in the past would have said was that they would have gone with a higher finishing gravity, and a little bit more of a fuller bodied beer.
Right.
Which I think we kind of busted that myth tonight with these cream ales. These were all
and out of the
very,
recipes,
very low finishing gravity, much more drinkable, regular, for lack of a better term, yellow fizzy beer that has the pastry and it was able to carry the pastry character just fine without being watery or thin or anything like that. And I think actually showcased the pastry flavor better by not stepping all over it.
Exactly. And that surprises me with these is that like the recipes I have here for a lot of them, they're mashing at standard temperatures, 152. There's not a lot of
156 right here.
There are very few of those though. Out of the whole set, it's like there's very few, and that's like 7 recipes I think or something like that. So if you think about it, they're making regular beers that stand out. I mean, a Tres Leches was the one that's at 156.
That's like 3 leches.
It is. There's all 3 milks in that.
Like
3
lots
milks.
of leches.
It's more than 2.
But it's one of those things where it's like it surprises me that they're making these beers that they make it sound like a dessert beer. So you're thinking like everything has to be mashed at like 156 or higher even. Everything has to be heavy, 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 and syrupy and whatever else. And it's like none of the beers you gave us are that way. Even the cherry chocolate, which was a huge beer, did not come across as a syrupy, hard to drink beer. It's like, oh yeah, I could probably drink a pint of that and find out how much trouble I'm in. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's one of those kind of things. And I'd rather have that than the tiramisu from Southern Tier, which really is hard to get through. I know a lot of people that would be fine with it, but they do several that are like that. They're just intense. They're too intense. It's like you drink them and you do feel like you're going to need a shot of insulin, after the fact. So they hurt. Diabetes. But it's like that's my thing of thinking about this, because the last one that I included was a Westbrook Brewing's Chocolate Coconut Almond Imperial Stout. And one of the beers that I always come back to as a home brewer that I had more comments about, was one of the first things I won an award with. It was more like an Almond Joy Stout. That qualifies is in that category as like candy beers, right? Dessert beers. Roasted almonds, roasted coconut. And I basically took what was more or less the Founder's Breakfast Stout recipe, but without coffee and more lactose, And it's one of those things, like those beers have been around. You make this beer, it tastes like a candy bar, right? It's real simple to do these simple things and change these beers around real fast. And without those additions, still a great stout recipe, still a great imperial stout. Just like if you made anything with the cream ales and you add little bits and pieces to, like you had the coffee, what's a little bit of cinnamon on top of that? How about a little bit of lactose? Changes it little by little, and then you're making it further into something. If you add a specialty malt that does have that graham cracker character, maybe actual graham crackers, what did you suddenly make out of this beer? That's my thought about making pastry beers. That's something to think about if you're trying to do this at home.
Yeah, and if you want to start with a good cream ale recipe like we've been doing here tonight, which to me is really a cool take on these beers. I can't say it enough. Our Cool Texas Cream Ale is a good place to start.
That's all the ones I did coffee and everything else with. So.
Yeah, and I'm amazed, really. It's a style that for a long time I really just didn't like. And when someone talked about cream ale, I just didn't want anything to do with it. And it's because of, in the BJCP classes that we did, and we had the Little Kings and that kind of thing. And it's just kind of a bland, boring beer. And like I say, I think home brewing and craft brewers have really breathed new life into a beer that I thought was kind of lifeless. And I've had everything from coffee to now, every pastry flavor we could talk about tonight, from blueberries to cookies and cream to all kinds of stuff. It's really, and Mikey's Skittle beer and all that. It's really a great palate to do whatever you want with.
And his beer didn't taste just like what happens to Skittles. Like, it wasn't just a purple glob of funk.
Right.
It was Skittles. It was like the multi-flavored version of it.
That's just Mikey, who's the
way better than it should have been.
Well, that was the master at work.
Extremely correct.
Yeah. And so it's a beer you can imperialize if you want to. It's very easy to just bump the alcohol up on it if you want something that's more than a 4 or 5% beer, and it scales up pretty well too. So,
and you can have more than one of these if you do keep it at that level. I think then we would all advocate then the cream ale, the lighter versions of these work a lot better than all imperial whatever stout. And
your Skittle one is an imperial, right?
No.
Oh, it's
the
not?
first one.
Oh, I thought it was. I thought it was like 7
so.
or 8%. It's not. Oh, okay.
I'd have to look again. But
That must be some other Skittle beer I'm thinking of.
Bastards.
Haven't made it in a while, have you?
Fruity Pebble beer.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah, I should probably do it soon.
Been there, brewed that.
It's a fun one to brew.
Now you're on to Mikey Light.
Mikey Light, yeah. I could do a Skittles Light.
Yeah.
Try that.
Yeah.
I think lagering would be an interesting way to try to do some of these beers to see what happens. So, I mean,
do Mikey Light with Necco wafers.
Lord,
make it taste
that
like
sounds
chalk.
delicious.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that probably brings us to the end of our adventures tonight. In future episodes, stay tuned for new shows. We should be getting our first episode of Final Gravity, and then also I believe United We Brew coming out pretty soon. Keep an eye out for that. We need another beer or two for the Final Gravity show. So if you're listening and you have something you think you'd like to submit, please contact us at info@texasbrewing.com.
Info at Texas Brewing, or you can go to our Patreon page, which actually has the PDF for submissions on it. It was our easiest way to put a PDF out because you can't do that on Facebook.
If you want some really in-depth analysis of not just the beer but the recipe itself and some feedback on it, it's a great way to do it. James and I will be really breaking things down. We've got a couple of beers lined up. I think we need 1 or 2 more to get started on it. And then also keep an eye out for your first episode of United We Brew, which I think is on the calendar. If I'm not mistaken, they've got one ready to go. They're probably going to beat us to the radio from Final Gravity. So watch out for those. Check our Patreon account. Wild Acre has already brewed a test batch of the agave lime beer.
Well, they haven't yet. They're going to next week.
Yeah, it's next week.
They were supposed
really?
to.
Well, I thought
They
Jared
were
told me
supposed
he
to
had done it.
yesterday, but it's next week now.
They postponed
Oh, okay, okay. I thought he had already done it. I was feeling like we were lagging behind.
No,
I
it's
brewed
next week.
our batch during the intro to brewing class this past Sunday, so that'll be done soon, and we'll be able to sample those. Plus, we have a few other experiments in the works.
Like the
In fact, Mikey's got all kinds of cool stuff he's going to be bringing in soon. He's doing some really cool things, so listen for that stuff. Again, please be sure to check out our Patreon account at patreon.com/comeandbrewItradio to help support the show. That's the reason you don't have to listen to commercials and you don't have to worry about us endorsing things we don't actually believe in, is because we don't have sponsorship at all. We rely on Patreon, so we have $2, $5, $10, and $20 options because every little bit counts. Plus, we want to reward you while you help keep the show going, get involved, and improve it. In fact, we literally reward a lucky Patreon listener with every live show and have a random drawing from the names of all our $5, $10, and $20 patrons for a prize at the end of every month. You just have to be a patron. So thanks again for listening to Come and Brew It Radio. Be sure to share with your friends on social media. Give us some ratings on iTunes and Stitcher, and send any ideas or comments to info@texasbrewinginc.com. Also, you can always check in on the Brew Days of the Guys at their Brew Focus Facebook pages at Brew with Stubby, Brew with Brando, Brew with Mikey B, Brew with Chris, Brew with Greg, and Brew with Nigel. And that does it for us. So
Thanks
come and
a
brew
lot.
it.
Come and brew it.
Come and brew it.
Go over it, guys.
Come and brew it.